Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei lost his powers and harem with all girls? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the xDoug-Dimmadome-x for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. A man lied under the shade of a tree. He was bleeding through 5 wounds, 2 of which were fatal. He was on his deathbed, heaving and crying. He wasn't crying because he was dying, he was crying because of what he left behind. He clenched his fists and whispered, "Kano, I hope my wish was granted so you could live a happy life even if I'm not there to live it with you. I'm sorry that I couldn't make it back in time for Christmas, buddy." Flashback. 2 men were in the living room. One stood in front of the fireplace, while the other was sitting, looking at the other man. "What is it you wish for?" the standing man asked. His tone was that of a high authority. "Like a king. I don't know if you can grant this, but I would give anything for this wish." "What is your wish?" "I get deployed tomorrow. I head off to North Korea for a top-secret assignment. As you may know, we are at war with North Korea." "I do." "Well, my wish is simple. I want my son to survive and lead a good life. I may not be able to make it back, and it's quite certain I won't. This mission is important, but one of us will have to stay behind. My 2 sons are in a coma right now. He is dying. If I come back, I can get his operation done, but if I do not come back, I want my son to live to awake from his coma, so he can live a happy life." The standing man was perplexed and was shocked. Never had he had someone make a wish upon a devil without a need for greed. He was willing to give anything up for his son, and it moved the man. "Your wish will be granted." "Thank you. My son will be alone in this world then if I die. His mother passed away last year through cancer." The man smiled, then teleported out through a red circle, leading the man to go upstairs to hug his son. Flashback ends. His son would live a good life, and even though he would never be there for him, his wish for his son to live was granted. The man smiled as his final breath was drawn, and his eyes shut. A red circle appeared within the hospital room. He walked out of the portal and made his way towards the bed where a child who looked very weak slept. This child had black hair that was kept like a military buzz cut, an obvious want by his father. The man himself had long red hair and wore spiked pauldrons. He was also a very tall man, and his stature was that of a king. He smiled a bit at the boy, looking down at him with compassionate eyes. "You will live like I promised your father, but I didn't have the heart to tell him. You will live as a devil, but your powers will be sealed until you are old enough and strong enough to receive them. Your life may be spared, but the life you will live will be tough. Though there are several good things that will occur. Live for me, Kano, and become strong." The man held out his hand and dropped a chess piece upon the boys and watched it get absorbed. "As I do not have another piece available, I have no choice but to give you a king. Consider it a gift from me to you for the life you will have to live." A king piece means that he could already have a peerage when he awakens. The king piece was accepted into the boy's body, meaning that his transformation into a devil has worked. The man stepped back into the circle, disappearing as the boy woke up from his coma, causing the nurses and doctors to rush in to check in and hug him, though none could bear to tell him the news. A boy with short black hair, cut like a military haircut, was walking up towards the middle school, Super Yuta no Academy. He wore a very old-looking shirt and pants. The shirt was gray with many stains on it, once a washing machine couldn't get out. It was caked on dirt, grease, blood, and a ton of other different types of dirt. His pants were brown with the same stains all over. He had 2 white socks, clean for some reason, and 2 old sneakers. He was a child who was very poor, and he looked the part. He entered the school gates only to be pushed to the ground. "Out of the way, Kano." About 5 kids walked over Kano, kicking him in the gut or as they walked by. Kano curled up into a ball, a tear threatening to break free. He dealt with this in elementary, now he has to deal with the bullies in middle school. Never learning how to defend himself, he made his way through school with ridicule, beatings, and just being tortured. The teachers never could do anything as the students couldn't get caught. Kano couldn't even defend himself at school if he knew how to. He would be punished too. He hated his life, he hated the fact that he could never find one friend in his life, but he was strong. He would survive and make his way into adulthood, as a man. A rich man. He did well in school, but he was antisocial now. He tried during the early years of elementary school, but the way he dressed, though he had no choice, he was ridiculed and forever shunned. So the final 2 years of elementary school, he grew to be longer and antisocial. Kano stood up as the kids left, and he wiped his eyes. He was only 12 years old. He walked up into the school and looked up. There she was, a beautiful black-haired girl who stood next to a red-haired beauty. The black-haired beauty had violet eyes while the other girl had blue-green eyes. The black-haired girl was looking at him while the other girl was looking elsewhere, talking with her or someone else, and he quickly averted his eyes. He only looked at her for 2 seconds, only to look away. Women also left their scars. Women were the worst to him. Only dating him so he could do their homework or help them with their school. Only for them to cheat on him and never even say thank you to them. When he confronted them, they laughed. You should be grateful we graced you with my/our presence. It was heart-wrenching. Kano now sat in his classroom, taking the far back corner away from the teacher and everyone. It was his homeroom class, and wouldn't you know it, the black-haired beauty from before took the seat next to him. She smiled at him gently, but he looked away, hurt in his eyes. She tilted her head confused and then tried to get his attention, but nothing worked. She could feel the aura coming from him. She saw what happened to him outside the school, seeing that he was just a kid with a rough life. Bullied, poor, and no friends. She felt the despair that came off him like waves. She knew that he had dislodged his heart from this world, no longer feeling happiness. Only anger and sadness. The girl sighed, and when the bell rang she got up and left. She met up with the red-haired beauty and both began to talk. Who's that boy, Kano? I'm not sure, but he looks lonely. Just let him be Kano. If that is what he wants, there is nothing you can do. I think there is more to him than we think of, Rias, the girl said, smiling at her best friend. The 2 girls just left for their next class. A couple hours later, the bell rang for lunch. Kano made his way into the lunch line, behind the black-haired beauty. She didn't notice him yet, and he was thankful. He couldn't deal with another woman tearing him down. Kano got his lunch from the line and made his way towards a corner table, only to be tripped by a girl from elementary school. She looked at him and laughed. Have a nice trip, see you next fall, you loser. The entire table she sat at laughed at him, and Kano began to get up, only for the girl's boyfriend to push his head into his food, which was spaghetti, meatballs, and a fantastic sauce. It was mushrooms and olives for him. Haha, you stupid nerd. You should learn to eat better. The entire table roared in laughter. Kano was sitting at her table, watching the commotion. She got up from her table when the boy got tripped and made his way to help him. She then saw the other boy push Kano's head into the food, completely destroying the plate. The boy removed his foot from Kano's head and sat down. Kano kneeled down towards Kano, and all the kids looked at her, wondering what she was gonna do. Look, it's the black-haired beauty. One of the 2 great beauties of our school, whispered one of the guys at the table. Damn, she looks fine, another said. Let's see what she does to that nerd. Kano ignored the barbarians and began to help Kano up. She held his arm and helped him to his knees, but Kano just pushed her away, gently though. He got up and rushed out of the lunchroom, spaghetti and sauce dripping from his face. The kids gasped at how the kid treated her. That little bitch. He pushed Kano, the black-haired goddess. All the kids growled at Kano, who left and swore that they would get him later. Kano sighed and made her way towards the table she was at and sat next to Rias again. Look at that, Kano. You made it worse on the poor guy. Those monsters are gonna tear him a new one today. I know, but I can't help it. The poor guy could use a friend, plus he's kinda cute. Oh geez, Rias said, though she was happy for Kano. If she found a cute boy, she should go for it. Kano never had a boyfriend before, though she has had plenty of boys come up to her. Kano never returned to the homeroom at the end of the day, and Kano was worried. She asked to be excused and made her way down the hall. She then heard a bunch of grunts and yelps, then a few other sounds that sounded like a punch. She rushed over and saw that outside was Kano being punched against a tree. They avoided his face, but they were aiming for his gut, and they were kicking, punching, slapping, kneeing, elbowing. They were just beating and beating up on him. They turned and saw that a teacher was coming up from the parking lot, and they ran. Girls and boys were all beating upon the poor guy. Akino made her way over and knelt next to Kano, who just sat there against the tree, awake and strong. He had no tears falling, but there was pain in his eyes. Kano looked at her and began to push her away, but Akino used her superior strength in this situation to keep him still. She lifted up his shirt and saw the bruising. She sighed and looked at the kid. "I'm Akino." Kano didn't respond, looking away from her. Akino lifted Kano into her arms and carried him like a bride, taking him into the school and to the nurse's office. She laid Kano onto the bed and the nurse began to look at all the wounds. "What happened?" "A bunch of kids were wailing on him in the playground." "I see. Well, the kid will be alright. No internal injuries, but he will be in pain for a while. I don't have permission to give him painkillers though, so he could go to the doctor, but I think he should stay here for a couple hours. I will send him home later." Akino nodded, took a look at Kano who was staring at the wall like it's interesting and left. A couple hours later, Akino and Ria stood in their club room overlooking the main entrance. Akino looked outside and saw Kano walk out of the building. He turned and looked up at her for 2 seconds, then walked away, looking forward again as he made his way home. A bright red light entered the room and Akino turned. Out stepped a red-haired man, taller than any guy Akino has ever seen. Rias looked a bit worried. "Brother? What's wrong?" "Oh, it's nothing, Rias. I just wanted to talk to you guys." "About?" The man walked to the window. "I see you guys have met Kano." "Who?" Akino asked. "The boy you helped to safety," Rias said. "So that's his name?" "Yes," the man said. "I know him. I'm the reason he is alive today." "What do you mean?" Rias asked. "Well, it's a long story, but here it is. 7 years ago I was summoned by a man. This man had barely any greed in his heart. He summoned me for one thing: to save his son if he died. The father was a soldier in the Russian Special Forces, the Spetsnaz. The father died in North Korea. The war that was going on between Russia, America, China and North Korea. Yes. American and Russian Special Forces invaded North Korea to end the war, which they did. The only casualty was, unfortunately, Kano's father. Anyways, the night before the mission Kano's father summoned me. He requested of me to save his son's life from his coma. Normally, the cost would be very high, but without any greed from the man, I felt a bit emotional. While I couldn't make it perfect, the cost of this was minimal." "What was the cost?" Rias asked. Akino was listening quietly. "A rough childhood." "Oh. Anyways, Kano is a devil though he doesn't know it. His powers are sealed until he becomes strong enough to release them." Akino perked up. "A devil?" "Yes, and a very strong one at that. He owns a very powerful sacred gear. I have no idea what this sacred gear is. It's a new sacred gear. This sacred gear is extremely powerful, and it will cause issues with the fallen ones." "As always," Rias said with a bit of disgust. "So, while Kano is a devil, there was only one way for me to save him that night. I had to make him into a devil, but the only pieces I had were a king and a pawn." Rias raised a brow. "You just made the boy into a super powerful devil and he won't even know about it." "Yes. He could receive a peerage from the start. I did this on purpose though. I made him into a king because of what kind of life he would live. I got into a lot of trouble with my wife and our parents, but it's all good now. They are also curious about how he will turn out." "I see. So what do you want us to do with the boy?" "Nothing right now. I don't want you to tell him he is a devil or whatever, but you can be his friend or whatever. That will cause no harm, however I do think protecting him would be wise." "Well, Akino here seems to have a little crush on the boy," Rias said with a smirk, teasing her best friend. "I see," Rias's brother said. He then walked back to the portal. "Well, I shall take my leave. Have a good night, Rias." "Night." Rias and Akino watched as the man disappeared and both went their own separate ways, heading to their own rooms in the school. Several months have passed since the day Akino brought Kano to the infirmary. It is now nearing Christmas time here in Japan, which unlike some other countries, is not a national holiday, so school is still in session. Kano and Akino have gotten closer. Kano has begun to speak to the black-haired beauty, though it has only increased the amount of beatings he receives from his peers, yet Kano stands tall. He never cries from his beatings, he just takes them. His face stays the same as he never shows pain. He is stone. He is rock, but in his heart a darkness has settled in. It was lunchtime and both Akino and Kano met each other in the lunch line. He would say hello, but that's all he would say. Akino could never fully have a conversation with him. She knew she was wearing his defenses down, but it still took a long time. She only just got him to say hi to her last month. "Won't you join me at my table?" Akino asked him, taking a seat at the table where she and Rias sat. Kano looked at her, then Rias, then took an empty seat across from Akino. Rias shook her head as she wanted Akino to stop trying with the boy. He was just unmovable like a stone, but Akino was persistent. She was his senior, but he never treated her better. He treated her like everyone else, an equal in his eyes, even if he was a bit cold. Currently, a boy with short white hair and red eyes was staring at Kano with hatred. This boy sat with the popular kids' table, and was the well-known man for stomping on his head during lunch. He was also known for starting 90% of the beatings that Kano gets. He then began to talk to his peers, talking about ending Kano's bullshit once and for all. I mean, he is now sitting and talking with both beauties. All of the people around him agreed and planned for the afternoon/evening. Akino looked at Kano, who ate quietly, and began to ask random questions. "So, what is your name?" "Kano." "That's a lovely name. Where are you from?" "I don't know where I was born, but I lived here in Japan most of my life." "Ah, that sucks sweetly. Do you have anything you want to ask me?" "No." Rias groaned and looked at Akino. "Leave the poor guy alone. He obviously wants to be left alone. So let him be. Look at him, you are scaring him." Akino frowned and was about to talk back to her best friend. "No, she doesn't scare me. Only you?" Akino covered her with her hand, stifling a giggle while Rias scoffed and went back to her food. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and Kano wasn't feeling very well. He was actually already doing so well, he could miss another month of school and still pass the 7th grade. He walked out of the school, bowing to the security guard who knew about Kano and his issues. He was actually sympathetic to Kano and his problems, so he allowed him to pass without a problem. Plus, he knew Kano wasn't missing anything today. He was the smartest kid in the whole school. Kano was making his way down the street when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Where do you think you're going, Kano?" It was a man with short blonde hair. He was with about 2 girls and 3 boys, all known for beating up on him, using him, cheating on him, girls, and being cruel bastards. They all approached him, wicked smiles on their faces. Kano just turned around and stood there, ready to take today's beating. "So, you thought you are good enough for our great beauties, huh?" The blonde-haired man chuckled. "Fried, what are you going to do to him today? You said you had something special?" Fried smiled and sent a punch to Kano's body, while all the other boys and girls began to punch and kick at Kano, who was now on the ground curled up in a ball. "Hold him down. I want to give him a present." The boys and girls both held his legs, arms, and head down while Fried sat on his stomach. Fried punched him in the nose, breaking it. "We don't need people like you defiling our great beauties, so today you get to be sent home with a gift." Fried took out a pocket knife, which was razor sharp. He began to twirl it expertly in his fingers, the blade close to slicing chunks out of Kano's nose, but it never touched him. "I think we should make you into more of a freak than usual," Fried said, chuckling evilly. He took his knife and shoved it into Kano's. The blade then sliced into the skin, showing up on the other side. He then took the knife and dragged it down, making a nice precise cut on Kano. Kano now began to cry, scream, and beg for mercy. He began to squirm, but everyone was stronger than him. Kano's filled with blood now, and his screams died down, only to go back up when the same treatment to his other side of his occurred. He was given a wicked bloody smile, and Fried just laughed maniacally. "Hey, look guys! He's smiling! He's crying for joy!" Everyone laughed and punched Kano into the gut, or laughing as they did so. Fried leaned over and whispered into his ear, "Stay away from our beauties." Akino was allowed to go home early since she had less classes, so she left the building. She heard screaming and laughing and made her way over. She saw Kano being held down and blood on the ground. She ran over screaming for them to get away. The two men who were on Kano's legs got up and blocked Akino. You aren't going anywhere, why? We have some business over here and you shouldn't worry your pretty head about it. Leave him alone. What are you doing to him? The two boys just kept blocking and Akino couldn't do anything. She couldn't use her demonic powers or strength to help, so she was stuck listening to the screams of Kano. Kano kept screaming as the blade was dragged down from his forehead to his eyes, then below his eyes to the sides of his nose. He now had two parallel cuts running from his forehead to the sides of his nose. All of his wounds were bleeding, but none were fatal, but he would now be scarred for life. Freed and the others let him go and got off of him, after delivering a punch or a kick to his or gut. They backed away and walked off, laughing. You are welcome to Akino, Freed said, roaring with laughter. Akino ran to Kano and knelt down next to him, looking at him. Kano was in massive pain, no longer making any sounds, but the tears still flowed. He saw Akino and looked at her with fear. He whimpered and scooted away. Wait, Kano. Come on, let me help you up. I have to stay away from you, Kano said, though that just increased the pain. Akino got closer and Kano got up. He began to hobble away, wanting to be left alone like he should have been. Akino just watched Kano hobble away, making his way towards the intersection. Akino began to turn away when a van pulled up beside Kano. She watched as a crowbar hit him in the back and sent him to his knees. She watched in horror as several figures stepped out of the van and shoved him inside, speeding away. Akino ran back to the building, hoping to tell Rias and get some help from her brother. A couple hours later, Kano woke up in massive pain, though he noticed he was stitched up on all his wounds. He looked around and noticed that he was in some kind of workshop. A wood shop by the looks of the tools. He was out like AT and chained down. He heard a chuckle behind him. He looked over and saw a man with a chainsaw smiling at him. So you are the one we were looking for. The owner of the Shadow Dragon, Erebus. We worshipped this dragon centuries ago before he was killed by several other dragons. Never before has he been resurrected, but now he is back. You brought him back for us. We must thank you for that, but now you must die so we can bring the dragon back to his former glory. He heard the saw turn on and watched as the blades turned. The saw began to get closer towards Kano's head, whose eyes were wide in terror. A bang was heard, though it was mostly muffled. The man turned off the chainsaw and looked around. What the hell? The man began to walk towards the door when it was kicked open. A man dressed in a green vest with brown pants and a red cap of some sort. It had the insignia of the Russian military on it, the hammer and sickle. The soldier walked through the door with an AK-47 and blasted the man with the chainsaw with 3 quick shots into the. The man went down hard. Another man behind him had a Saiga 20K shotgun and blasted holes into the 2 guards. 5 men stepped into the workshop and 4 began to go past Kano, securing the perimeter. Kano? Yes, sir? We want you to come with us. Back to your homeland. My homeland? You were born in Russia. Your father was one of us. Kano did not speak, but he nodded, wanting answers from his family. What? He is where? That is what my brother told me. Kano is in Russia now, but he is safe and sound. There is nothing we can do. Are you sure? Yes. I'm sorry, Akino, but it looks like Kano is no longer going to be with us. Akino. The school of Ko Academy was busy as usual. A school that was originally an all-girls school finally opened up to boys. The girls-to-boys ratio is 3-to-1. It was the start of the new semester, and everyone was really standing outside for the first few hours as they talked with their friends and found their classrooms. There was one giant crowd as the biggest clique stood in one spot. They were also blocking the entrance to the academy. The crowd began to disperse with whispers as a man who was around 6 feet 5 inches walked into the school grounds. They looked at the man and whispers began to circulate. That guy is so hot. Look at those scars. Oh my God, that guy is so hot. Isn't that Kano? Isn't that the guy Freed completely ended up in middle school? Is he really showing his face again? The years he has been gone have been good to him. Look at those muscles. A ton of different whispers. Kano himself stood tall and proud, but his eyes told a different story. While the face is a mask all of its own, the eyes were the true link into the heart and soul. His eyes bore sadness and fear, despair and terror. He was surrounded by those who tortured him during middle school, and he was still scared inside. He was unable to get over what happened in middle school even when he did what he did in Russia. Kano was muscular. He no longer looked like the stick he once was. He looked like someone who went through the hell gym, but he came out no longer cute, but handsome. Kano made his way out of the group and towards a board with all the classes. He stood in front and began to scan for his name. Rias and Akino stood in their clubhouse nearby, overlooking the school grounds. Rias was looking out at a boy who was being chased, with 2 other boys, by some women. Rias then noticed a commotion in the school grounds and looked as if no man walked into the grounds. "Hey Akino. There is some man causing a commotion out there. I wonder what's going on." Akino made her way towards the window and looked out. She scanned around but couldn't see anything. "What man?" Rias pointed towards the one who was looking at the board. They could only see his sides. "I don't know anything about him." "Why?" "I'm just curious about why he is causing such a commotion." The man turned his front towards the club and he began to walk towards the front door of the academy. Both Rias's and Akino's jaws dropped as they spotted the man Kano. "He's back?" Akino exclaimed. "This is the first I've heard of it." Akino fidgeted and Rias smiled. "Go ahead, Akino. Go meet up with your friend. He looks gorgeous now." Akino bowed and ran out the door and made her way towards Kano, who was now stopped by a bunch of men and women, all of them who made fun of him in middle school. "I'm surprised you still show your face around here, Kano. I thought Freed ran you out of this town for good? Guess he didn't do a good job, did he? Perhaps we should give him a call for him to finish the job?" Kano stood taller than all of them, and he looked up above them. He spotted someone running at him, and he pushed his way through the group. It was Akino, and Kano began to walk towards the running girl. Akino wore a big smile on her face as she spotted Kano, and she ran right up to him and gave him a big hug. Kano hugged her back and looked down at her. "I thought you were gone for good, Kano. What happened to you? Disappointed?" "No, I'm just curious. It's a very long story. I don't think I would have time to explain it here." All the boys around glared at Kano as Akino grabbed onto Kano's arm and dragged him towards the house nearby. Rias sat on the couch sipping tea when Akino barged in with Kano. Kano looked like he was dragged, and Rias chuckled at how happy Akino was to see Kano again. "Rias. Kano. Nice to see you again." "Likewise." Akino gave Kano a cup of her tea and he took a careful sip, looking at Akino now. "So Kano, why are you back?" "Why else? To finish my high school years." Rias smirked from behind her cup, seeing the obvious cover-up. Akino sensed it but didn't push it. "So what happened?" "What happened during what time?" "After you were kidnapped." "Oh. Well, I was taken into some kind of wood shop. There a man with a chainsaw talked about something called sacred gear and how I have the power of a dragon," Kano said with a roll in his eyes. Akino and Rias shared a glance but didn't say anything. Kano was obviously not buying it. "After that, some Russian Spetsnaz came in and rescued me. I was then taken to Russia where I learned about my family, about my father and his line of work. Then that's where I got involved in a special program. I was trained among 8 other kids like the Spetsnaz, though we got a much rougher training as we were trained to be the elite of the elite. We were codenamed Spartans. Anyways, I flew back here and met up with you too." Akino and Rias looked at Kano with a bit of shock. "Did they force you into the training?" Rias asked. "Not at all. There were about 15 of us total, but 6 declined the offer and were just sent through the school there and given the tools needed to live their lives. All of the trainees were kids who lived rough lives and were always picked on. I think it was because we knew what to do if given power helps the weak." "Oh my, that sounds pretty scary." "The training was honestly. I was trained to be a deadly warrior and I am, but now I'm here to go through school and make it through life." The bell rang, signaling the start of the school year, and Kano stood up. "Well, guess that's my cue. It was great to see you again, Akino. I missed you." Akino blushed and giggled. "I've missed you too, Kano. Farewell." "Goodbye, Rias." "Bye now." Kano left, leaving Kano and Rias behind. So didn't your brother want us to bring him into the devil's world during high school? Yes, he did, though I'm not sure how. He is going to meet the fallen angels soon and see them actually try to kill him. Did you smell him? Yeah, he is giving off the smell of the devil. His powers are awakening, and if what he said was true, he holds a dragon inside of him. Yes. This dragon is something even my brother doesn't know about. Very curious. Yes, I wonder if it's good or evil. Only time will tell. Rias and Kano left their room, heading to their own classes now. It was the evening after the day Kano returned to school. Kano was walking through the town, curious about what has changed in 3 years. He was heading towards downtown, hoping to get some grub. His stomach was growling and he wanted some food. He stopped at the crosswalk and looked both ways before crossing. He felt a hand on his shoulder, and when he turned sharply, he saw it was Kano. Hey Kano. Where did you come from? I've been trying to catch up to you. I thought we could catch up. That would be fun. I'm heading towards my favorite restaurant, then I need to find a place to stay. Think I'll try a hotel. My father left me quite a bit of money. Kano nodded and followed Kano. In reality, she was only with him to watch over him. Rias asked her to keep an eye on Kano as tonight was a good chance he was going to be attacked. Kano was eager to accept as she could use the time to get to know Kano better. She did have quite a crush on the man. Kano turned his head and saw something. It was a bunch of people picking on this homeless man. They were actually beating him up and trying to mug him. Kano ran over and started yelling. Hey! Leave that poor man alone. The people looked at Kano and laughed. Or what? Wait, you were the guy we were looking for. They all laughed and stabbed the poor homeless man with a spear of light, which made Kano's eyes grow. She could easily fight them off, but she didn't want to reveal her powers to Kano just yet. She should, but she doesn't want to unless she has to. Kano growled at the 4 pricks and began to approach them. You little shits think you are so tough picking on one man all by yourself and the man is homeless. You guys are pathetic. Oh, such big talk from just a itty-bitty devil. Wait, what's this? 2 devils here and one of them one of the strongest queens in existence? My, what luck, said the leader, a female with long blonde hair. All 4 of them grew wings with black feathers and they all approached Kano and Kano. What's this? Some cosplay party? Well, even if it's pretty cool, you guys are going to pay for what you did to the man. So who is first? He began to look at them and change his vision, watching his surroundings. One of them charged at Kano, then the rest followed. The first attacker brought his light spear down on Kano's, but Kano took the man's wrist and spun him around and stabbed his own ally. The man who got stabbed went down, and Kano twisted the man's wrist, took the spear of light and stabbed the man who created it. The next man tried to tackle Kano to the ground, but Kano's shoulder rammed him in the jaw, sending him down to the ground. Kano followed up while the man was in the air, falling with a punch to the solar plexus, making sure he couldn't breathe. Kano watched in shock as she watched Kano dispatch the 4 fallen angels without even knowing what they were or being scared. Her eyes bulged as he touched the spear of light as a devil and not even a burn mark. Only the leader was left, and she had 2 spears of light. She roared in fury and tossed them at Kano, who ducked under them and used his back foot to propel him to her. She used his right hand to jab at him, but he used his right elbow to force it up and away from Kano's face. Kano counter-attacked with a cross to her left cheek. He then brought both of his hands together and struck her face with both wrists, dazing her. Now dazed and panicking, she attempted a wild haymaker, wanting to end the fight now with a powerful punch. Kano used his left elbow to block it by having her wrist hit his elbow. The haymaker, while powerful, if it fails it leaves the target open. He counter-attacked with a right jab to her body, cracking her ribs. She attempted a pharaoh left, attempting to strike his sides, but he blocked with his right elbow. Now wide open, he used his left elbow to strike her jaw, weakening it. He then used his left and punched her in the jaw, fracturing her jaw. She was no longer able to strike him, as she couldn't react to him. Kano used his right and jabbed her in the, breaking her ribs, then used his left to stun her in the solar plexus, forcing all the air out. He then used his right to strike her jaw on the left, dislocating it. He then aimed his foot up and kicked her in the, sending her into a trash can, her body broken and defeated. Akino stared at Kano with her jaw open, amazed at his combat capabilities. He defeated 4 fallen angels by himself. He took down the leader of this group in 6 seconds, his moves flawlessly executed. Kano took a deep breath, as he was holding his breath in. He sighed and looked at Akino. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Oh, don't be sorry. I kind of liked it, she said, blushing. She did quite enjoy a good fight. Oh. I will keep that in mind then. Now shall we get going? Yes, let's. Akino held onto Kano's right arm and both began to make their trip towards Kano's place that he likes to eat at. They began to talk about life inside the Russian military, and Kano happily told her. He told her that all of his friends were her, and the rest of the Spartans. He somewhat considered as a friend, but she didn't come off very friendly to him at first. Akino listened and commented occasionally, asking other questions. She asked him if they trained him in hand-to-hand combat. He replied that while they didn't train martial arts to them, they taught them how to block and send an opponent down quickly by targeting the weak spots on the body. They gave them supreme reaction times and made sure that whenever they went up against an opponent, they could win using strength and reaction speed. She nodded and stopped when she felt a killing intent and a dreadful aura. She turned her head and saw a boy with short blonde hair smiling at them. Kano felt a slight chill on his spine and looked around. He then noticed Fried Selzen, the bastard who gave Kano his scars. Fried began to laugh maniacally as he came over from across the street. Well, looky here. Kano and his slut. What do you know? Kano became a shitty devil. Oh, how I've wanted to kill you for a long time and now I can. Let's have some fun, Kano. Let me give you more face scars. Fried drew out his light sword and a gun, and aimed at Kano. He shot a bullet of light, but Kano didn't see it at all. However, the bullet never even struck Kano, as it was swallowed within Kano's aura. What the? So you have protection against projectiles, eh? Well then, let's slice you up. What are you talking about? You never shot anything at me, you dumbass. Anyways, I would advise apologizing to Akino. Apologize to a devil? You are the stupidest devil I've ever met. Ha ha. What a loser you are, Kano. Fried charged with his sword of light, and Kano froze for a moment. Catch the blade in your hand. What? Catch the blade with your hand, it cannot harm you. Kano reached out with his left hand, and while the light blade swung down on Kano's head, Kano gripped the blade. Fried and Akino stood in shock at how Kano held onto this sword of light, blessed by the church. What is this? How are you not being sliced up? This is a sword of light. Devils like you should be hurt by this light. You know, I don't know what you people mean by me being a devil, but it's getting really annoying. As for your sword not working, I guess you just don't have working equipment. Fried growled at the insult and began rapidly firing his gun at Kano, though Kano didn't see any flash or anything. Kano pushed Fried away from him, only to send a right jab into Fried's nose, breaking it. You bastard devil. I don't have time for this shit. I'm out, but we will meet again. Fried yelled as he took something from his pocket and threw it on the ground. It created a blinding flash of light, and when Kano and Akino could see again, Fried was gone. What a prick, Kano said. Akino held on to Kano and spoke. How did you know you could grip that sword's blade? A voice in my head told me. I'm guessing it was my gut saying I could. I always trust my gut. I see. Well, I'm glad you are alright, but can you come with me, please? Sure. Can I get the food to go then? Akino nodded and waited as Kano went into the small burger joint and picked up 2 chili cheese dogs and a chocolate peanut butter shake. About 10 minutes later, Kano and Akino were walking back into the school grounds and up towards the clubhouse where Kano saw Rias for the first time when he returned. When Akino and Kano came in, Rias was in her panties and only her panties, which made Kano cover his eyes. Akino giggled a bit and brought Kano to sit. Hey Akino. Kano. What brings you guys back here? Kano was attacked. Is he okay? More or less, Kano said. Put some clothes on, would ya? I really don't like having to cover my eyes. Rias rolled her eyes and put on a t-shirt, which did nothing to hide the fact she was not wearing a bra. Kano sighed and just looked at the ground. It was Fried Selzen and 4 fallen angels. They attacked him just like you said. Fallen angels? Kano asked incredulously. First dragons, then devils, and now fallen angels? What the hell are you people in this town talking about? A bright red light shined on the floor near Rias, and out stepped Rias's brother, xDoug. Allow me to answer that question. You, Kano said. I know you from my past. I saw you for a second when I woke up from my coma. Who are you? So you did see me, huh? Well, I am what you are. A devil. A devil? I'm sorry, but I really don't understand. Then allow me to explain it. A voice said from Kano's right hand. Everyone looked at Kano with shock or curiosity. Kano's right hand transformed into something scaly. Pitch black scales with white outlines began to appear on Kano's right hand with a blood-red jewel in the middle. His fingers grew into claws and then the transformation stopped. From his hand to his elbow, it was scaly. The voice began to explain everything about devils, fallen angels, and the angels to Kano while everyone looked at the hand. When the voice stopped, everyone looked at Kano. I see, and you are this dragon that I supposedly have inside? Indeed. I have finally been reincarnated since my death, centuries ago. I am Erebus, the dragon of everlasting darkness. You were that wicked dragon that terrorized human villages long ago. You were the most evil dragon in existence. You were known as Erebus, the Dragon Emperor. xDoug exclaimed. He. Indeed I am. I have finally returned to the land and now I'm inside this boy. What do you plan on doing with the boy? xDoug asked of the evil Dragon Emperor. I have nothing planned. The boy is too strong for me to take over. I am under his control. I cannot do anything against his will. xDoug looked at Kano, whose face was deep in thought. He was obviously trying to think about all of this and trying to understand. Boy! The dragon roared at Kano. Oh, What is it you like to do? Well, what do I like? I like to catch snakes and hold them for a while before releasing them. Being with my friends is another interest, but I am also interested in fighting. I enjoy a good fight and I will kill if I have to. I have no qualms about ending someone's life who deserves it. You might just be worth it then for me. The dragon arm disappeared and went back into its slumber, leaving Akino, Kano, Rias, and xDoug alone. Kano? Akino asked. Yes? Are you okay? Not really. I'm not upset or angry, I'm just overwhelmed with information. So are you a devil too? Akino nodded and two black wings sprouted up out of her back. She looked at him, hoping he didn't hate her. And the rest of you? Both xDoug and Rias grew wings, though xDoug's wings were and had blades for the edges. Well, Kano, I will take my leave. I hope you stay with us. The xDoug disappeared and left Rias, Kano, and Akino alone. Well, I'm tired, so I think I should check into a hotel. All right, Rias said. Akino, however, had a different idea. Why not stay with me? A sleepover? I have wanted to try one. All right. Kano nodded, smiling. Akino smiled back and both Kano and Akino left the building, heading towards Akino's home. Rias rolled her eyes at Akino. She is so into him. She chuckled and turned out her light, heading to bed. It was the day after Kano learned about the existence of devils, dragons, fallen angels, and angels. It was October 31st, and while Halloween is a holiday in America, it's not a holiday in Japan, and it's not celebrated. In Russia, it's not a national holiday, but people celebrate quite a bit. Even the Spartans celebrated it while they trained. It was the one day a year where the military allowed them to do their basic training in costume. It was 5 till lunchtime when Kano put on his costume. It was a black trench coat and a tan fedora on his head. He sported a white undershirt with a tie that was striped with blue and white going down slanted to the right. He downed a cigar and lit it with a lighter. He walked out into the lunchroom and smirked on the inside at all the people staring at him. Akino came over to him from her table and raised a brow. What's with that outfit, and do you smoke? It's Halloween and this is a special cigar. It's healthy to smoke. Smoke is normally dangerous, but the plants used inside actually change the smoke into something that helps instead of harms. The smoke itself does several things. However, let me explain the plants a bit. I use arrowhead vine and fragrant dracaena. The first one relieves stress by lowering blood pressure. It will also help calm you down if you get stressed by preventing the blood pressure from rising. The other one lowers fatigue. Helps me wake up so I can do better in school. The smoke caused by these plants also strengthens the lungs, Kano said with a thick yet obviously fake Italian accent. Akino nodded and began to lead Kano over towards her table, which was occupied by Rias, 2 other guys and 2 females. One of the females had short white hair. Akino was going to introduce him to the rest of them, however she looked over towards a group who stood up and made their way. They were all dressed in pirate costumes, and they all had a smile on their faces. Kano spotted the pirates, and a smile grew on his face. The pirate in front was dressed as Blackbeard, and then music began to play over the loudspeakers, though it was only directed into the cafeteria. Akino was getting a bit upset with the guy who insulted Kano's facial scars, but Kano and the Blackbeard character laughed together. They then hugged each other like they were brothers. Kano! It's great to see you again, my friend. Who is this beauty? It's great to see you again, Dimitri. This lovely lady is Akino. I told you about her, remember? Oh, this is her? Dimitri asked. He bent over and took Akino's hand, in the top of it. I want to thank you for helping our good friend out during his time of need. Akino giggled and blushed. Oh, it was my pleasure. So who are you guys? Oh, my apologies. I am Dimitri, and we are the rest of the Spartans. It was the evening now, and Kano was with Rias and her club. Kano was sitting upon a very high dresser, looking down at everyone. So everybody, this is Kano. He is not part of my family, but he is a friend of mine, so treat him well. Kano here is a devil like all of us, and he possesses one of the 2 most powerful dragons in existence, the Dragon Emperor Erebus, the dragon of everlasting darkness. Everyone said hello, but there was a new voice now. Issei's arm grew into its gauntlet form, and the jewel was alive, and it was looking at Kano. So you have returned, have you, Erebus? Drake said. Kano's right arm turned into the thin dragon-scaled arm. Ha, it's been a while, Drake. I see you were sealed as well. Indeed. I was sealed centuries ago by God, Mao, and the fallen angel leader, right after a couple of us dragons killed you, or so we thought. So there is a bit of rivalry between Erebus and you? Will there be problems now? Kano asked. No, boy, I have no quarrels with the Red One. Still, us dragons do enjoy a fight, so perhaps you and the Security can fight sometime. That would be unwise. My owner is quite weak and pathetic. His only love is for anyway. How unlucky. Kano is quite powerful. Not even I can take control of his mind, yet he is someone I would follow. He enjoys combat. You are most fortunate, Drake says, crying. Issei rolled his eyes and looked at Kano, who looked absolutely bored. The doors opened to the research club, and in came the pirate-dressed Spartans. Rias raised a brow. What do you need? Your brother contacted us. He wants us to give Kano his pieces, Dimitri said. Wait, you guys are devils too? Kano asked incredulously. Nah, did you not know? The Spartan program was a joint program between Russia and Surzex. We didn't know at the time either, but we knew why the program was initiated. It was designed for you. Surzex has hopes for you, it seems, Dimitri said. What are these pieces? Dimitri explained everything to Kano, and handed him the evil pieces. Kano nodded. So these are mainly used for the raiding games? They sound quite fun. Indeed, my friend. Indeed. We all would like to join your group. What say you? Spartans. What is your profession? The Spartans all roared multiple times in war cries. Kano smiled and sent the evil pieces into his fellow guys. Only Dimitri had sacred gear. Out of all the pieces left, he had 1 rook, 1 bishop, 1 queen, and 4 pawns left. None of them took more pieces than they needed. The Spartans all left now, devils now. They willingly became devils with Kano, as they were all brothers/sisters. Kaneko took glances at Kano every now and then during the conversation. She admired the way he was with his comrades. She, though very unemotional on the outside, looked up to people like him. She would watch him carefully. Was the next day after receiving a team. Kano sat on top of his normal spot in the corner on top of a high dresser. His pieces did not have a club nor where they requested to. They could teleport at any time to Kano if needed. Kano was alone with Akino and Rias, though Akino sat on the dresser with him. All 3 talked about being a devil and their jobs. Kano listened for the most part, understanding how the devils usually worked, but Kano had no interest in handing out flyers. He will participate in raiding games and crush the competition to his promotion to Ultimate Class Devil. His power was certainly that of an ultimate, but Kano did not know that. Only Erebus and Surzex know. However, everything changed when a white portal appeared. Someone with silver hair dressed in a maid's outfit climbed out. Grafia, Rias said. Grafia and Rias were now talking about an engagement, and someone named Lord Riser Phoenix. Kano wasn't really paying attention, and Grafia didn't seem to notice the man hiding in the shadows. Kano used his powers of the shadows to create an extra strong shadow, though if you looked hard enough you could see him. As Grafia didn't know he was there, she didn't see him. The door opened and Issei, Kiba and Asia walked in. Oh, Miss Grafia. Alright, so everyone is here. May I speak freely? Rias nodded, and when Grafia was about to speak, a bright red portal appeared on the ground and fire rose from it. The sound of a bird was heard and a man stood from the flames. Phoenix. You know, those were such great prey of mine when I was alive. I was quite well known for being the bane of the Phoenix, said Erebus to Kano, so only he could hear. Erebus also enjoyed the hiding spot created by Kano. It's been a while since I've been to this filthy place, and Eve come for you, my Rias, said the man. A few minutes later, the man introduced as Riser Phoenix was sitting on the couch with Rias. He was groping her leg while sipping tea from his cup that was made by Kano. Kano made the best tea that has ever been made by anyone. She has in fact been offered by different tea companies to sell her recipes. She has declined. Anyways. Rias stood up. That's enough. I will tell you once again, Riser, I will not marry you. And I will tell you once again, I do not care what you want. You are to marry me for the betterment of the devils. I don't care if I have to incinerate every last one of your servants. Incinerate. Ha! I would like to see this dodo to try and burn me and you, said Erebus, to everyone in the room. He freely controlled whether or not just Kano or everyone could hear his voice/thoughts. Who just called me a dodo? Come over here and say it to my face. Kano leapt out from on top of the dresser, which the top corner was hidden with shadow magic. Everyone except Rias and Akino said something like, "Where the hell did he come from?" I said it, Dodo. Got a problem? Yes, I do. How dare you, a reincarnated low-life devil, insult me, a pure blood? You should know your place. A low-life? Hey, you know it doesn't matter where you are from, what color your skin is, or what type of family you were born into. What matters is what you do with your life. You are nothing but a pathetic devil who thinks because he was born with power and into a rich pure-blooded devil family that he can talk down to someone. You are worse than a dodo. You are nothing. How dare you? Rias! You should teach this servant of yours some manners, or I will for you. He is not my servant, Riser. This is another king. Him? A low-life devil, a king? Absurd. Kano. Allow me control of your body for a moment. You can take it back anytime I want to show this nothing, what it feels like to have true power. Do what you must. I hate this bastard. Is it okay with you, Rias? I know you hate him, but is it okay if we step in? Do what you will. I do not control you, Rias said, obviously giving Kano permission without saying she wants him to, though she does. Good. Kano closed his eyes and his body went limp. He still stood. A second later, Kano stood up and opened his eyes. His eyes were entirely black, like looking into death itself. Now, nothing, allow me to show you the true power of the dragon of everlasting darkness, Kano said, though it was with Erebus's voice. Impossible. You were supposed to be dead. I'm back and am now going to show you a reason why your kind feared us. Kano/Erebus grasped onto Riser's head while both hands gripped his shoulders. Kano began to vomit up black smoke which was being inhaled by Riser. Riser began to scream in agony as he began to fall to the floor, writhing on the floor. Kano no longer held on to him, but looked down on him. Two mists began to come out from both of the men. The one from Riser showed what Riser saw. The one from Kano was showing what Kano saw. The one with Riser showed nothing but darkness while Kano saw light. He saw Riser from 2 feet away, and Kano was circling him. They were in Riser's mind. Foolish bird. I may have been a killer, but I have never looked down on my opponents or victims. I've never thought of them as low lives. They may have been weaker, but that gives you no right to look down on them. I never did. I respected everyone I came in contact with, even during the battle for my life with the Welsh dragon, the vanishing dragon, and Tannin. I respected all three and complimented them. You will now know true terror, the true darkness. Get me out of here! Riser lit his hand, and everyone saw from his vision a massive fiery hand. However, the fire began to dim. The fire didn't extinguish, but the flame lost all of its brightness. The darkness swallowed the fire into nothingness. Fire may create light, but nothing can break the everlasting darkness. Only the strongest of lights could compare to its power, and only few had such power. However, it all ended after that. Kano released his hold on Riser as the mist began to flow out of Riser and back into Kano's. Riser sat straight up, breathing heavily. Call off this engagement, nothing. Why, yes. I will. Riser said out of fear. He could not compete with such a terror. Riser immediately teleported out. Kano's eyes returned to normal as the dragon gave his control back. Kano looked around at everyone, who looked at him with terror/shock/awe. What? Your power. It's so powerful, it's terrifying, Akino said. She was smiling though, a bit wet now from what she saw. A man with so much terrifying power, and using it for good? She was so wet. Rias looked at Kano and bowed. Thank you for helping me. Kano smiled. Oh, it was not an issue. I hate people like him. Is there anything I can do to repay you? Well, how about a rating game? I would like to give it a shot. This will have no effect on either of our statuses. Just a little battle practice. Is that okay? That is actually a good idea. My servants could use some practice. How about you train? I want to see if Issei over here can give me a good fight. I want to know if all of you can. Please take a month to train. I can't wait. Well, I thank you for the training. Would you like to come with us? Rias looked at Akino with a devious smile. Akino blushed and just looked at Kano. Ah, sure, why not? I will be bored either way, and I can talk to Akino and the rest of you guys if I come with. All right. We leave in the morning. Kano nodded and all of her servants said yes. It was the morning after Kano defeated Riser's mind. Kano shattered the mind of the Phoenix, showing off the power of darkness. Imagine. No light anywhere, you cannot see where you are going. No walls or a ceiling, just a never-ending hallway without any walls. You are lost in the darkness, you lose your mind to its power. Riser hasn't lost his mind, but he has now fear imprinted in his brain. It was the morning and Kano was walking next to Rias and Akino, carrying his own bags. Thanks for the invite. Oh, not a problem. I'm sure Rias was interrupted with Akino's hand over her. What she meant to say was, it's a pleasure to have you along, Akino said with a smile. Akino removed her hands and Rias just smirked evilly at her. Akino glared at her. Kano looked back at Issei, who was struggling up the mountain cliff. Asia was talking about helping him, but Rias said no. He needs to do it on his own. Kiba carried a bag the same size as Issei but easily surpassed in speed. Kaneko carried a bag twice the size of his own bag and passed by him. Issei groaned in misery. A few hours later, everyone was gathered in the dining room for lunch. It was sandwiches. Kano had peanut butter and banana, Akino had roast beef, Rias had turkey, Issei had ham, Kaneko had a cod, Kiba had bologna, and Issei had peanut butter and jelly. Rias finished her food the fastest and spoke up. So it's time for some training for all of us, especially you, Issei. Issei groaned and Kano chuckled. Come on, Issei. Be a man. Get strong. If you desire your harem so much, you need this training. Issei smiled and pumped his fist into the air. All right. I'll do this. 2 hours later, Issei was training his stamina and strength with push-ups with Rias. Akino was playing with her thunder in the backyard. Kano was currently in a tree, looking up at the sky. He noticed a girl with short gray hair. It was Kaneko. She was walking under him and her emotionless face was still there. He was curious about why she was so distant. She began to punch at a tree, perfecting her form when Kano swung on the tree branch by his legs and flipped himself to Kaneko's side. Kaneko, in a reaction, aimed a powerful punch at Kano's gut. Kaneko looked up and saw Kano. She bit her lip. She then looked down and noticed Kano easily deflected her fist with 2 fingers. Very powerful. My fingers actually hurt. Sorry. I thought you were a pervert. I am one, though it's reserved for those I care for a lot. Kaneko nodded and went back to perfecting her form. How about you train with me? You are the enemy. No, I'm not. Not right now. Plus it's a game for fun. Not for seriousness. What do you got to lose? You could use a stronger rook-like opponent. Who's the rook? Me. I mean I'm a king, but my specialty is massive defense and attack. I don't do swords, though I may do a knife sometimes, and I don't do demonic energy like Rias or Kano. So come. Let me see what you got. About 10 minutes later, Kaneko and Kano were in combat. Kaneko was hammering out punches at Kano, who was simple dodging by moving his body to the side, or deflecting. This isn't all you got, is it? No response from Kaneko, but he knew she had a secret. Release your full power. Are you afraid of the power? No answer, but Kano kept pressuring. Do not be afraid of power. If you are strong enough, you can endure it. But I am not strong enough for my power. Is your powers very deadly? Kano stopped dodging and knelt down now to look her in the eye. She never stopped punching at him, but he moved his head sideways or blocked with his hands. Yes. I want you to see something. Kaneko stopped and watched as Kano turned to his side. He looked out towards a mountain. He gathered a mass of shadow demonic energy, then fired the ball. The ball was the size of a basketball. The ball struck the mountain, but nothing happened. What is it? Crack. Crack. Crumble. Crash. A section of the mountain, the size of 9 co-academies, 3 laid next to each other, then 2 on top of each one, crumbled. The mountain turned to dust and tiny pebbles when it finally ended up on the ground. That power? Yes. You think you have some deadly powers? Try being stuck with mine. My darkness destroys the inside of my opponents. I understand the fear of losing control. When I started with my powers, I had no control. My darkness was wild like fire. I could have hurt someone with my powers. My darkness causes pain and misery while destroying the opponent. It is something that Eve trained to control, and I still need more. So do not be afraid of losing control, Kaneko. I will be here to guide you and protect you. Kaneko looked away from him. Do you promise to stop me if you have to? Always. I am a friend to anyone who needs it, even if it gets me nothing but pain. He said the last part in a whisper to himself. Why does it give you nothing but pain? Kaneko asked. Kano raised a brow. You heard that? Kaneko nodded. Kano knelt down and showed his face. These scars, these were given to me in middle school, which was where I first met Kano and Rias actually. These were given to me by a kid named Actually. I think I can do this better. Mind if I do something to you? What is it? I'm going to show you my life through my eyes using my powers. Do you trust me? Kaneko nodded. Kano closed his eyes and placed his palm against her forehead and hummed. A dark black light shined from his hand and Kaneko fell into his arms, unconscious. For 5 hours, Kaneko lived Kano's life. Watched some and felt most of what went down. She watched Fried cut him up, but she felt the beatings. Kaneko opened her eyes and bolted straight up. She turned around and looked at Kano, who wore a smile. She looked into his eyes and saw all the pain and suffering he went through, yet he can still show a genuine smile. I don't know what to say. Then you don't need to. I just wanted to show you that I know what it's like to be in your position. She looked surprised, but he nodded. I read your mind as well during the time you were out reliving my experiences. I know what your sister did, and I know what you are. I know what it's like to be treated horribly. I know what it's like to be looked down on, and almost be killed. I know what it's like. But you lived such a worse life than I. How are you still able to smile? Because I have friends, and because life moves on. I've been given a second chance to remake my life and make the world a better place. I still have the darkness in my heart, but little by little, day by day, I cleanse my heart by myself. Though honestly, my only true friend is Kano. Rias wasn't very kind to me in the past, if you didn't know already. I saw, and I would like to be your friend. Kano smiled. Then smile, cause I will be yours. Kaneko's body changed immediately. She grew 2 cat ears and a tail, and a smile on her face. Kano smiled. You look adorable with such an appearance. Kaneko blushed and hugged Kano, who hugged her back. I think it's time for dinner. Kaneko nodded and both walked side by side, friends forever, though Kaneko now had a big crush on the boy. It was almost dinner time where the Gremory team and Kano were training. Well, Kano wasn't really training, but he was helping out. He wanted to get the Gremory stronger for many reasons. One of them was just because he wanted a good fight. The other reason was because if they were strong, they would have an easier life. Kaneko went to the restroom when they returned and Akino was in the kitchen. Everyone else was out of the house, it seemed. Kano closed his eyes and rested. The doors opened and Kano listened. It was Kiba, Rias, and Issei who came back, and they were all conversing about training. Rias, Issei, and Kiba took their seats and Akino came in. Dinner time. Akino placed down potatoes of all kinds. Mashed, baked, potato salad among other things. There was also corn, turkey, and gravy. It was a Thanksgiving dinner even though it wasn't Thanksgiving yet. Where is Kaneko? Bathroom. Kano replied from his meditation. In back. Kaneko said, and everyone turned. They all saw that she had cat ears and a tail. What's going on? You never turned into this before, Kaneko. Are you finally using your powers? Why? Rias questioned. I have someone to protect me. Who? Rias asked, and Kaneko replied by climbing into Kano's lap. Kano jerked awake and looked down on top of the head of Kaneko. Oh, was all that could come out of Kano's. Kano, you helped Kaneko get over her past? Rias said with shock. I guess I did. Did I also awaken her cat personality, and she has claimed my lap or something? Kano asked with confusion. Kaneko replied with an iron. Kano narrowed his eyes and gave an expression of, oh, what have I gotten myself into now? Akino and Kaneko were now glaring at each other, though it was only obvious to everyone but Kano and Issei to what they were glaring about. Kano began to eat his dinner by leaning over the side of Kaneko, and it was tough, but he did it. He knew that Kaneko was a cat, so she would claim something as hers, and he had no intention of denying her. She was really cute too, and she was a nice girl. Though now he scolded himself for his thoughts, and chuckled to himself. What's so funny, Kano? Kaneko asked as she looked up at him, her beautiful hazel-colored eyes staring at him. Oh, it's nothing. All right. The dinner finished shortly and Kano was leaning back, sighing with pleasure from the food. Akino. Fantastic cooking? Stuffed. Akino blushed. Oh, it was nothing. Akino smirked at Kaneko and winked at her, which earned her a glare. So, how is everyone feeling about their training? Rias asked. Well, it has only been a day, so I can't say for sure. However, I will say Akino has become a threat to even me. Her senjutsu is extremely dangerous, as it will be one of my weaknesses in a battle. However, the only ones here who could be a threat to me is Issei, Kiba, and Kaneko. Only melee opponents are a threat to me. Kaneko blushed for the praise Kano gave her, and Akino glared at her. Kaneko just smirked and stuck her tongue out. Why do you say only the melee opponents? Well, I could show you if you trust me. Sure. Show us why me and Akino cannot threaten you. Kano picked up Kaneko like a bride and placed her on his chair behind him. He smiled at her and walked outside. Everyone followed Kano, and Rias was impatient. Shoot at me with all you got. I will not die. Rias and Akino looked at each other, then Asia, who nodded. Rias and Akino began to glow with their powers. Rias was covered in crimson aura and Akino was in brilliant yellow. They aimed their hands and released. A giant thunderbolt shot down from the sky, and a crimson and black destruction aura were shot at him. They both collided at the same time and exploded. Dust, dirt, and smoke were now coming up from the explosion site. Kaneko and Akino were looking with worry, but when the debris cleared, it showed Kano with no injuries and his clothes were unharmed. When they all looked closer, they saw a visible wall of shadow swirling around Kano. The shadow wall was most misty and transparent. I trained my demonic powers to create a shield. I could also create a shield against melee attacks, but I wanted to be able to feel some pain from being struck by my opponents. Plus, I could use my fighting skills to defend myself. Why reveal your weaknesses to us? Akino asked with confusion. It's simple. You need to get stronger. If I show you where you need to work on to defeat an opponent, then you know exactly what to train. It is Kaneko, Issei and Kiba that will the deciding factors against me, though I will say this. Your demonic powers do drain stamina from me. The shadow wall takes demonic energy from me, so each time I get hit, I get drained, though it's not much. Plus the stronger you guys are, the more fun I have. Rias nodded. Then we will work on that tomorrow. You going to help train us? I can help Kaneko train. She seems to enjoy my company. Kaneko blushed and smirked at Akino, who glared at her. How about you train me instead, Kano? Akino said with a coy smile. She was flirting with him, and he couldn't tell. I can train both of you if that's what you both want, but I offered my services to Kaneko first, so if she wants to be alone, then it's only fair that I train her tomorrow. Kaneko clung to Kano. I want personal training, Kaneko said, grinning at Akino. Akino glared at her and swore revenge. Kano nodded. All right. Well, I'm going to return to my room. I think it's time for me to get some sleep. Rias nodded and watched Kano go back to the mansion. An hour later, Kano was asleep finally, snoring softly. The door opened to his room and there walked in Kaneko. Kaneko bit her lip, but she undressed to her nighttime wear. She wore only her small bra and a pair of panties. She curled up next to Kano under his blanket, blushing. She began to fall asleep when the door opened again. She looked at Akino from under the covers, who wandered in. Akino didn't even show hesitation when she climbed in with Kano on the other side. Kaneko was to Kano's front and Akino was to his back. Akino quickly fell asleep and Kaneko sighed, falling asleep right after. Kaneko knew it was going to be tough to compete with Akino, who was better in body size and knew Kano longer, but she would still fight for his attentions and love. It was the morning after the first day. Kano began to stir, and this woke up the other two women. How were they sleeping exactly? Well, Akino was laying her head on his and Kaneko somehow was able to sleep curled up in his lap. There was a decent-sized drool pile on Kano's lap, and Kano, as all males, wake up with morning wood. Kaneko looked up and saw Akino, who looked back at her. They both began to glare at each other, then looked at Kano's face. Kano went back to sleeping peacefully. Go away. Kano is mine first, Akino whispered to Kaneko. Kano is not yours. You didn't have him as your mate, so it's fair game. I will not give up on him, Kaneko whispered back. He is my friend first. I have more right to him than you. So what? That doesn't matter. Kano will be mine. Akino growled softly and Kaneko just hissed softly. They both didn't want to wake up Kano, but it was getting tough not to attack each other. Kano began to stir again and groan as the morning hit him. He opened his eyes and tried to sit up. The hell? Why can't I move? Kano said to himself, only to look down. Akino and Kaneko both looked at him with the cutest faces, both innocent. A morning, Emma, take a guess here, but both of you ended up sleeping in here, correct? They both nodded. Why? Kano asked. Nightmares? They both nodded, still a bit afraid to reveal their feelings towards him. Kano nodded and took the answer. So Akino, you sleep? Yeah. Do you like it? I don't care. I was just curious. I sleep with just my underwear, always sleep in what's comfortable. Nice underwear, Kaneko. Interesting color. Didn't know you like dark blue, Kano said, observant. Thanks, Kaneko said with a blush. Kano sighed and lay back down, no longer trying to sit up. So we going to sit like this, or shall we get some breakfast? I'm fine either way. Akino and Kaneko both got up from him, and Akino went to get dressed, as did Kaneko. Kano groaned and sat up, rubbing his eyes. He then got up from his bed and went to get dressed. Kano made his way towards the dining room table, and there sat Rias. I noticed that Akino and Kaneko went into your room last night. Did you do anything to them? Are you and them still virgins? Kano looked up at her from his groggy state. Well, I was asleep by the time they came in. I woke up to find them with me. They said they had nightmares, and on another note. Kaneko and Akino both came down the hallway, glaring at each other when they heard Rias and Kano talking. They both hid around the corner, listening in on the conversation about them. I wouldn't dare do anything to them. I would never rape them. I may like both ladies like that, but I would never think they like me. Even if they did like me, I'm honestly a bit afraid of being with a woman again like that. I see. Well, I'm just curious. I honestly don't care what you do with them. Kano just groaned and got up to get himself some eggs and sausage. Akino and Kaneko both walked into the dining room and sat down, which Rias saw. Were you guys listening? Rias asked. They both nodded. I knew you were. It's why I asked? Rias just smirked. Just remember you guys are friends. Don't let something like this stand in your way of friendship. Akino and Kaneko nodded and looked at each other. They both sighed and hugged each other. They both then sat down and waited for breakfast. Kano came out of the kitchen with a giant plate of scrambled eggs with turkey sausage on a separate plate. Dig in, Kano said as he scooped food onto his plate. The three women both dug in and ate. 4 hours later. Despite Akino wanting to join them, Kano promised Kaneko personal training. Today was going to be a sparring session. We are going to spar. I want you to work on punching through my shield. This will train your stamina and punching power. My shield will also harm you every time you strike it. It will drain your stamina, so it will be tough on you. You want to do this? I can find a new thing to help you out. I trust you. Kano closed his eyes and the shadow shield around him, which absorbed ranged attacks, then formed a misty armor around his body. It was very much transparent and wispy, so it wasn't too easy to see. Kaneko charged at Kano and struck out with a left jab. Her fist struck hard against the shield, but it did nothing, well, nothing visible to the eye. Strike over and over. My shield regenerates when it's not being struck. Keep hammering away at me. Kaneko aimed her senjutsu-powered fists and began to send punch after punch into Kano's shield. Each punch was given every 2 seconds, and she landed 20 punches. On the 21st punch, a visible crack appeared. Upon the 30th punch, the shield shattered. Kaneko aimed one more punch and struck Kano in the gut. Kano didn't expect it, and went down hard, falling to his knees, then to the ground. Kaneko looked down at him, who gave her a thumbs up and then sat up. I did not expect you to go farther than that. I wanted to win the battle. And you did. I applaud you for going farther. Now you are a major weakness for my shields. Due to your senjutsu, you can damage my insides. Well, my shield takes all of that damage for itself. Your senjutsu will actually completely nullify my regenerating shield until it is completely shattered, which makes me use up a ton of stamina to rebuild. If you can learn to do more damage with your senjutsu, while making sure to stay alive against me as an opponent, you can take me down. You are powerful. Thank you. Not a problem. Now keep hammering away at my shields. Decrease the number of punches needed. The training lasted well over 10 hours, skipping lunch. Kano treated Kaneko to a special dinner by the river. Salmon, which she happily ate. Kano was training Kaneko to become stronger in offense, and making her master her senjutsu. She several times almost went over the limit, but Kano hugged her and she calmed down. Kaneko blushed every time, increasing her love for the boy. Kano returned to his room after dinner with Kaneko, telling the group he is done for the night and he would like alone time before bed. They all agreed. Erebus. You there? Yes. I am here. I'm just sleeping often. I'm tired lately. I'm sorry if it's me. I honestly should talk to you more, but I'm afraid of disturbing you. No need to worry about it, boy. I will talk to you when I'm awake. So what is it you seek? I want to find a way to protect my friends in case I should fall. Are you asking me what I think you are asking? Yes. Well, you would need items for said thing. You can keep them in the shadow dimension for later if you need to. Understood. What are these items? Your blood, the everlasting darkness. Kano and Erebus talked into the night before bed, and Kano listened very well for the rest of the items. Kano fell asleep around midnight. It was the day of the match between the Gremry group and the Spartans. The battle was being watched by Serzex, who was Rias's brother. Her mother, father, and Graphia, who was her sister-in-law, was also there. The battlefield was Ku Academy, and the Spartans' base was in Principal's office, while Gremry had their clubhouse. Alright, remember? Our opponent are the Spartans. They are a group of highly trained military operatives, and most likely they will be ruthless. Take down them swiftly. Only 2 of them have sacred gears, and they are new to being devils. According to our informant, Kano, who is the king of the Spartans, the weakness of the king is Issei, Kaneko, and Kiba. Kaneko. You said that you would be the major threat to him, right? Kaneko nodded. Yes. My powers awakened thanks to Kano are also one of the things that threatens him greatly. Good. Issei and Kaneko need to go to the gymnasium. This is the middle and we should see a bunch of them. They have a total of 9 2 knights, 1 rook, 1 bishop, 4 pawns and their king. The bishop is also a threat. This is Dimitri. He is the only one besides Kano who has a sacred gear. Be careful. We only have 6 players. They have 9. Kiba. We need you and Akino to prepare the trap we discussed. Akino, you and Kiba will then flank in the forest and aim for any of their pieces not at the base or at the gym. At their base. Me and Asia will advance on the king when it's safe. Now let's win this. Yes. Everyone yelled. Attention. The battle begins in 5 minutes. Prepare the last of your strategies. Graphia said over an intercom. 5 minutes later. The battle now starts. Everyone went to their destinations. Issei and Kaneko arrived in the gym and felt only one presence. Kaneko and Issei were both shocked to see Kano standing in the middle, shirtless. It showed off his powerful muscles. He had both hands in his pockets, waiting for them to come out. Rias! The king is in the gym. I repeat, the king is in the gym. Roger that, Issei. Take him down now. Use his recklessness against him. Right. Balance breaker countdown. Boost, the gauntlet said. Kaneko walked down the steps, cautious when Issei just charged at Kano head first. Kano smirked as Issei closed in. Wait, Issei. It's a trap. But it was too late. The trap was sprung. Kano removed his hands from his pocket, and then he threw something into Issei's eyes. It was sand and dirt. Issei yelped in pain from the debris and swung his hand out in a left jab. Kano blocked and delivered a right cross to his left cheek. Akino rushed inside the gym with Kiba, as everyone began to close in on Kano. She then watched as Kano delivered his signature move. Akino rushed to Kaneko's side. This is his signature move. It is highly devastating when it finishes. We really need to help him now. Kaneko, Kiba and Akino both ran towards Kano to save Issei, but a giant tornado was brought down around Issei and Kano. They looked up and saw Dimitri smiling from the stage. Can't allow you guys to interfere. Sorry. 4 pawns and 1 knight of the Spartans retired. Ah. So Rias and Asia have defeated most of our people. Well played. Your king is quite strong against our melee users. I am impressed. Now, shall we play Thunder Queen? Akino and Dimitri both fired wind and thunder bolts at each other, creating magnificent explosions. When the fight started, they noticed that Kano had kicked Issei already and Issei was traveling within the tornado's wind. The tornado finally threw Issei into a wall, defeating him. 1 pawn from Rias defeated. Issei. No! Rias screamed over the mic. What happened? Their bishop and king formed a fantastic combination together. Dimitri has the power of the wind as his sacred gear. He formed a twister around Kano and Issei and walled us off. Kano took down Issei, putting sand into Issei's eyes. I see. Am on my way. 1 bishop from the Spartans retired. Akino came down from the sky, breathing heavily. If he was able to be a queen, we would be equal, but he wasn't an attacking type anyway. He was a support. I had the advantage. Kano smiled and looked at Kiba, Akino, and Kaneko. Yes. It has come down to the end. This was a great match, but it's time to end this. Who is next? Akino aimed her hand at Kano and Kiba raised his sword, readying a 2-person strike. However, a blur pushed past Kiba and there was a knight holding onto Akino's right shoulder. In the man's right hand was a knife. The knife was then plunged into Akino's gut, forcing her to fall to the ground. She groaned and began to disappear immediately. 1 queen of Rias retired. What? How? Rias exclaimed as she finally came through the door. Simple. Poison, the man with the knife said. The poison isn't fatal to anyone, but it drains stamina. The poison is fast-acting. This would normally take about half of anyone's stamina, but she was already weakened by Dimitri. I am a knight in the Spartans group. Kiba raised his sword and rushed at the knight, who began to duel now. Kaneko, Asia and Rias all looked at Kano. I am not easily defeated. Now bring it on. All of you, Kano said, telling them to strike. Rias began to fire off aura of destruction at Kano, clearly upset over the losses of her precious pawn and queen. However, a beam of ice collided with the destruction and nullified it. When they turned, a new opponent came in. Oh. This is my rook. Please enjoy him. He is a magic user who has been granted extreme defense. That is what he worked on. Go fight him, Rias. Rias turned and began battling with the wizard rook. Kano and Kaneko got into a battle stance and Kaneko charged. She aimed punch to his gut, but he easily deflected it. She began to send punch after punch at him, at random places. She was trying to be unpredictable, which she was, but Kano either dodged or deflected. Kano looked over towards his knight and nodded. The knight of his ran at Kaneko, and Kiba followed. Kano gripped a punch towards his leg by Kaneko and turned her so her punch would hit the wall. Kano then reached down and took 2 knives from his boots. He took one knife and stabbed down. It looked like he was going to stab at his knight, but the knight zigzagged behind him. Before Kiba could react, he felt a knife in his knee, completely sending him to his knee. Kano then stabbed downwards with the other knife, sending Kiba to his knees, at the mercy of Kano. Kano stood back, then brought his leg up. Kano then Spartan kicked Kiba in the face, breaking Kiba's face. His nose, jaw and skull were now began cracked and shattered, defeating Kiba. One knight of Rias defeated. Kaneko turned and punched at the knight, who actually didn't dodge in time. He took the punch in the throat, sending him into a wall. One knight of the Spartans defeated. It was down to Rias, Asia and Kaneko versus Kano and his rook. Rias was uninjured while the rook wasn't, but it was because of Asia. The rook aimed his next ice shot towards Rias, but then made a turn and aim at Asia. Rias predicted this and aimed a destruction aura up. However, the rook anticipated this, and shot his ice towards Kaneko, striking her square in the. Kaneko was sent flying and she collided with the wall, while also frozen in a block of ice. By the time Rias looked back at the rook, Kano already had Rias in a headlock, squeezing the air out of her. Kano began to wrestle Rias, who was struggling violently to the ground, keeping her still. Kano used his other hand and his everlasting darkness to keep her destructive powers in check. She could fire them, but she knows she would only hurt herself from the resulting explosion. Rias kept squirming, but Kano had his legs around her waist and tangled in her own legs, keeping her from actually getting free. His hand had both of her wrists locked in an embrace. Rias's struggling slowed down and finally it stopped. Rias Gremry. Defeated. Everyone was finally teleported out of the battlefield, and Kano ended up on a hospital bed. He was uninjured, but he was tired. It was his first real scale fight and it was tough on him. He was glad that he had actual battle plans that worked. I mean his strategy with Dimitri's wind, the rook firing blasts at one target only to change and change again. Then the position changed with the knight. It was a great battle and Kano was happy. Kaneko wasn't ready for scale fights, but neither was the rest of the Gremries. No strategies. It was their first game though, so it was not an issue. Xerxes walked into his room and looked at Kano. Nice fight. I am quite happy to see that the Spartan program was a success. You got strength and battle skills. You as a commander would do very well. Thank you. I'm just happy I had a good fight. I am quite satisfied too. The seal is so weak, I could actually feel your blows and feelings so well. It made me feel alive. I'm enjoying myself. I haven't actually gotten sleep much when I had my body. Now I can rest. Erebus said. Xerxes raised a brow at what Erebus said about the seal, but didn't say anything. Well, I just wanted to congratulate you. I will let you rest and meet up with the others. Kano nodded. 2 hours later. Kano walked into the Gremry group's hospital room and smiled. He leaned against the wall. Kano. You were a good opponent. It was fun, even though I lost. Rias said. Thank you, though I know I can do better. At first, my strategy to attack you with the 4 pawns and the knight was a fail. I didn't research you very well. That was my mistake, but the strategy within the gym felt nice. I need to get better and I will. From my viewpoint, you guys need better teamwork. While all of you are powerful, Teamwork will be your enemy. Thanks for the tip. I will keep it in mind. Kano nodded. Is your group okay? Kano asked. I didn't make them hate me, did I? They all said no, and Kano smiled. All right. Well, I guess it's back to school we go. So do we take a transport circle? Yeah, I think that's best. Cool. I will wait then. Kaneko looked at Kano with her cute cat face. Do you still lack a place to stay? I can stay in the school. Sona said that would be okay. Oh. All right. Kaneko said with a smile. Well, actually, since I'm staying with Issei now, I think I will remodel the house. How about we all stay in his house when it's completed? If that's what you want. I am a part of your club and I do need a place to sleep. That would be fine. Rias nodded and Kano left. Within the month between the raiding game and the present, Kano had plenty of troubles with Kaneko and Akino. Neither girl could say their feelings to him, nor could he say his feelings to them. They would sleep with him every night. Akino was always and Kaneko started to be for her sleeping. She got a lot more daring thanks to Akino's influence, but she said she found it more comfortable. Kano didn't bat an eye. He was a pervert, which is true, but he never stared at the two women. Kaneko loved that he was a gentleman, and while Akino did enjoy it, she really wished he would stare. Kaneko kind of wished he would stare too, but she enjoyed it either way. Other things have happened as well. The three powers, the fallen angels, the angels and the devils all formed an alliance for peace. Azazel, which was a powerful fallen angel and the leader of the fallen angels, became the advisor for the Gremry group. Kano and Azazel don't get along very well, both going at each other quite often. Kano would always win as Azazel's light spear could do no harm to Kano, but that was okay. Kano and Azazel were slowly making a friendship. There was also a new threat out in the world. The Cows Brigade. Kano and the Gremrys both helped stop them many times, especially one at the school where a bunch of magicians and traitorous devils attacked, but Kano and Issei stopped it quite quickly, well with the help of Odin, a god from Valhalla. As well, from this time, the Gremry group got Rias picked up Zenobia, a knight, which was a previous angel who learned about the death of God and the former Lucifer. There was also Gasper, a bishop, who was a time-stopping vampire, though Kano quickly helped him out with his cowardness. Kano was quite scary to Gasper, who needed it. The last one to be picked up was Rosweiss, a rook, who was the former Valkyrie for Odin. It was Christmas time, and Kano now lived within the Haida residence. It was currently 8 in the morning and Kano was waking up. Akino and Kaneko were both in his room, which was on the 5th floor. He had the whole floor to himself, though it seemed to him that Kaneko and Akino lived on his floor more than their own. He didn't mind, but it was getting very difficult to not touch or look at them when they were in his bed. Though he never ever caught them coming into his room to sleep with him. They would always wait till he was fast asleep. They were good. Kano began to stir in his sleep, groaning. Akino and Kaneko began to wake up from the movements from Kano, who was waking up. Kaneko was curled up in his lap, a small drool spot on his underwear, and Akino had her head on his and her left arm over him. She snuggled with him while Kaneko slept on her official spot, his lap. Kano yawned and stretched while his eyes began to flutter open. Without even looking down. Good morning, Akino. Good morning, Kaneko. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, both of them said. Kaneko stretched like a cat and pawed at his belly, showing off her tiny, which were still attractive. She sat up and stretched again, yawning with an yawn. She got up and went to her room to get dressed. Akino crawled over Kano's face, showing off her and her nice pink core. Kano closed his eyes, used to how Akino always left his room. Unknown to Kano, Akino did this for her own pleasure, as she just loved to tease. I mean, he never saw her except the first 2 times until he learned she will do this all the time, but still. Akino left, and went to get dressed in her room. Kano sat up, stretched, and rubbed his belly. He got up and got dressed as well. He then left the room and went down for breakfast. When Kano came down the stairs, as he was the only one to actually take the stairs, he saw that the entire house was decorated. It was decorated in red, green, and white all over. There was mistletoes hanging everywhere, wreaths of different colors on the walls, tons of long garlands on the walls. It looked expensive, but the Gremrys are rich. Kano finally made his way down to the 1st floor, heading into the dining room. He sat at his chair and laid his head down while his arms were at his sides. His posture was, "I hate the mornings. Bug me and it'll gouge your eyes out." A plate was placed before him and he mumbled thank you. He looked up and saw Kaneko and Akino standing on both sides of him. They both wore nothing but an apron, nothing. They were completely behind the apron, and Kano's side. He thought at one point they were for him, but he threw that thought out the window immediately. He said thank you to them, and they bowed and left. Kano took a drink of his dark chocolate, hot chocolate, and began to eat his eggs and sausage. He would get the same meal every day, then leave about an hour later to go work out in the first basement floor, then come back for a protein shake, then disappear for a long time within the bath. As a devil, he didn't have to do much. He was a high-level devil as he was made into it by Xerxes, so he had really nothing to do. He could go and participate in the raiding games, but Kano said he wanted to complete school first. Kano finished his breakfast and began his daily routine. 4 hours later, Kano finished up with his bath and came up to the first floor with a carton of milk. It was just regular 1% milk. He walked into the living room and took a seat in his normal spot. This spot was in a corner which was designed for him. There was barely any light coming in, and he would increase the darkness with his own powers, concealing him from eyes who didn't know he was there. Everyone knew he was there, but it still made him happy. Everyone was in the living room, surrounding the Christmas tree. Everyone was giving out presents to each other, and Kano had his back against the wall. He was sitting on a bookcase, which was made to hold his weight. His feet dangled off the other end, so he pretty much just laid against the wall, resting. He had his eyes closed and he thought about Christmas. Tears began to fall from his eyes, manly tears. He began to miss his father and his mother. According to his friends, his father died in the war before he could return for Christmas. Kano had no one for Christmas really. He was always alone during Christmas, and Dimitri knew he wanted to be alone. Kano was unstable anyway during his training back then. Kaneko and Akino looked back towards Kano, who didn't come over for presents. They both spotted the tears running down his cheeks and looked at each other. They both nodded and got up, heading over to him. They felt the aura/vibe he gave off, which said, "Leave me in peace," but both women disregarded it. "Kano?" Kano opened his eyes, wiped his face, and smiled brightly at both girls. "Yeah? You enjoying yourselves?" They both nodded. "Yes, we are, but we noticed you didn't come over for your presents." "I got presents?" They both nodded. "Of course you did. Why did you think you wouldn't?" "I've never received presents before. This is my first Christmas that I can remember." "Your first Christmas?" "Well, yes, it is my first Christmas. My father died before he could spend Christmas by my side while I was in my coma. He spent Christmas with me for 5 years while my mother did for 4. I was in a coma ever since I was born. No doctor could figure out what went wrong. They even said they would pull the plug, but my mother fought for my life. So yeah, this is my first Christmas that Eve spent with people." Kaneko hugged Kano and Akino did as well. "You don't have to spend Christmas alone anymore. You have a family now," Kaneko said. Kano held Kaneko to his gut with his right hand and hugged Akino with his left. He had tears falling from his cheeks from how happy he was. Thank you guys. Thank you so much," Kano said with a sniffle or two. Kaneko took his hand and led Kano towards the tree, kneeling down with him next to all of the gremlins. "Welcome back, Kano. You are part of our family," Rias said with a smile. Akino and Kaneko gave Kano his presents. 3 of them. He opened all of them at the same time and more tears began to fall. There was one from Kaneko, one from Akino, and one from everyone else. The one from Kaneko was just a card. Akino baked him a cake and the Gremry group's box was empty. He looked up and the entire Gremry group gave Kano a giant hug, laughing as he groaned, trying to get out from the giant hug fest. They let go from him and let him read the card. The card was written by Kaneko and it basically said Merry Christmas among other things like best wishes, I love you and other friendly things. Kano sniffled and placed the card and the cake in a shadow dimension, smiling. "Thanks so much, guys. It means a lot. We all know what life you have had for the longest time. We just wanted you to live a much better life, a happy life," Rias said. Kano nodded and hugged everyone himself. It was a week after Christmas and Kano was with the Gremry group. They were at a meeting with Azazel talking about the Chaos Brigade and the Hero faction. Kano wasn't here for the hero faction, so he never got to fight them. Kano during that time was off in the shadow dimension with Erebus, who flies there, though he can never leave nor can he use any ability. Kano was preparing for the ultimate ability that Kano could use, and Erebus helped him out. The meeting was actually concluding, so they were heading out. Akino and Kaneko were both holding Kano's hands. Kano, Akino and Kaneko were all talking about the raiding games, since Kano enjoyed it so much. They were talking strategies, and Kano was offering to assist Kaneko some more in training. She eagerly accepted, and Akino got jealous, though Kano trained with her during the Christmas break. Kano during the Christmas break got Akino to accept herself as part fallen angel, and she received lightning as her power. She now has the power of holy lightning and thunder, meaning she is extremely dangerous in combat. Even Kano has to be wary of her now. Ophis was also here, as she was being protected by Issei and the rest of the Gremries. Issei's rival, who Kano never met because he was off in the shadow dimension, entrusted Ophis to him. A green mist began to enter the room, and Kano looked around. The Gremry group minus him were all wearing combat faces. "What's going on?" "Dimension lost," Azazel said with disgust. "One of the top 5 Longinuses in the world, and it's in the hands of the terrorists." Kano got into his battle stance, fists clenching in and out. A shadow barrier began to surround him from magic attacks. He snapped, and before the mist finished creating the barrier, a teleportation circle which was black appeared. Out came all the Spartans, ready to go. Dimitri walked up next to Kano. "What is it?" "Cow's Brigade. Hero faction." "All right. Let's do this." When the Gremries and Spartans went down the stairs, there in the lobby of the mall was 6 figures. 1 female and 5 males. One of the males was really short and looked like a child. Another male had glasses and was pretty handsome. Another male was a handsome young man with silver hair who had swords and sheaths on his belt. They gave off terrifying auras. The female was a sword user as well. Another male was a giant person with a well-built body. He looked strong. The last male looked like the leader, who had short black hair and a spear which was being tapped against his neck. "Ah, the Gremries. Who are these extras?" "These are close friends of us. They go by the Spartans," Azazel said. "Interesting. Well, let us see what they got." Kano nodded and sent his group of soldiers out with Kida, Issei, Zenobia, Irina, Kaneko, and Akino. They all went to battle. The Spartan group minus Dimitri went after Chow Chow and Siegfried, while the Gremries took care of Heracles and Jean. George and Leonardo sat on a couch, watching the battle. Siegfried stepped forward and drew out an ominous sword. "This here is Graham. Taste its power." The man swung the sword, and a blast of power rocketed from it. The Spartan group tried to go through it with their swords and magic powers, but the blast went through it. The blast struck the Spartan group head-on and began to eradicate their bodies. "My team, you just killed my team," Kano said with anger. "Now it's my turn." Kano charged at Siegfried, who readied Graham and Bombung. Before Kano could get to Siegfried, he felt immense pain in his left leg. When he looked down, he noticed a cut in his thigh. It was smoking. "My true Longinus, the ultimate sacred gear out there. It has the power to kill God. Its light is extremely deadly to devils like you, though it seems the light isn't doing that much damage to you. What are you?" "Boy. You just took damage from the ultimate holy relic. You will not survive this hit without medical attention, but you will survive long enough to fight for a while. You do not have enough power to control the full power of the everlasting darkness." Kano stumbled to his knees and looked around. Zenobia, Irina, Rosweiss, and Kiba were all bloodied and beaten. Kaneko and Akino were both hurt bad but still conscious to fight. Azazel was also injured, though he took down Jean, who perished by his spear of light. Kano closed his eyes and a tear fell. Kano knew that he could not win this fight. Kano knew he was outmatched now. Kano knew that this was the end of him and the Gremries unless he acted now. "Azazel. Dimitri. Get them all out of here now. It's time. Dimitri, it is time to do my ultimate ability. Please take them all and leave." Kano got up from his stance and swung his fist at Siegfried. Siegfried took the punch and fell to the ground, but up immediately. He swung Graham at Kano and sliced his back, sending pain into his body. The holy spear then embedded itself within Kano's back. Kano collapsed to his knees in front of the misuser, George. Blood was beginning to pour from his as he coughed up blood. Your body is quite strong, Spartan, but it is not enough. Kano and Kaneko roared at Chow Chow and began launching attacks at him. Chow Chow easily deflected the lightning. The holy lightning thunder attack struck Kaneko, who skidded next to Asia, who began to heal Kaneko, who was unconscious now. Chow Chow then swung his spear and sliced a big chunk of flesh off of Akino's gut. The light began to burn her, but Issei ran over with phoenix tears. He quickly sprinkled it on. Azazel, Issei and Dimitri picked up the beaten gremmaries and began to retreat. They all knew what Kano was going to do. You cannot leave. This is a dimension created by our Longinus user. You cannot escape. Akino began to scream in fury, trying to escape Issei's grasp. No! We can't leave him behind. Please! Let me stay with him. No! Issei just held on while Azazel looked back. He is doing what a soldier is trained to do, giving his life for the ones he loves. He will let us escape. Chow Chow finally caught on by that message and turned. Kano was already off of his feet, and a knife was plunged up through George's throat and into his brain. George, who was only a human, died instantly. Siegfried and Chow Chow both plunged their weapons into the body of Kano, who fell to the ground, bleeding profusely. Everyone looked back towards Kano and the rest of the hero faction, watching the dimension around them was weakening and shattering, though it still remained. Heracles and Leonardo were forcefully trying to keep the dimension open with their magic powers, and it wasn't working, though it stalled the collapse majorly. By giving up my life and using the items within the shadow dimension, he coughed up blood while opening up a portal to the shadow dimension. I released the dragon Emperor Erebus, the dragon of everlasting darkness. A black light appeared from Kano's hand and shot straight up. While looking up, they saw a white light coming from Kano's, his life force. From the hole came several items. A bottle of blood, a fang from a battle site where Erebus fought the dragons who sealed him, his fang and flesh from a dragon. A ball of darkness, the size of Drake, appeared. The ball began to pulsate. What is going on? Chow Chow screamed. What is this ominous power? Drake began to speak up, so everyone could hear, even the hero faction who was quite a bit away. So I see. Kano has found a way to break the seal us dragons put on Erebus. Who is this Erebus? Chow Chow asked with curiosity. The ominous black ball began to grow a tail from behind. The tail was becoming extremely long, and it had spikes coming from the top of it. The tip of the tail grew into a sharp spear-like tip. Erebus was before the time of the current Mao and you. Only Azazel here knows whom Erebus is really. Erebus, the Dragon Emperor. The dragon of everlasting darkness. This was a dragon who was so powerful, he was equal to Great Red. He was more powerful than Ophis here. The black sphere now began to grow wings. These wings were the size of Dragi's wings, but they were not bulky. These wings were thin, meaning that it was meant for speed. The tips of each wing were spear-shaped and sharp. This dragon was an evil existence. He was a dragon who caused countless deaths of devils, fallen angels, and even humans. He was a dragon back in ancient times who would destroy towns for the fun of it. I, the Vanishing Dragon, Tannen, Fanner and Vitra all went to battle against this dragon. We could not kill this dragon. We had to seal him away inside the shadow dimension, but he somehow got loose inside of the man you just killed. The black sphere now had the body, tail and wings of a dragon, but now the neck was beginning to grow out. The neck was long and skinny, meaning speed. On the top of his neck and down his back were spines which were sharp. His head began to grow now. On his head he wore two horns like ears, which curved backwards. The head was actually open. Teeth began to grow, all looking sharp like razors. Finally, a small horny began to grow on the tip of his snout. So this dragon loves to fight and loves to kill everything. I wonder if he would join us to kill the underworld and heaven? Think again, foolish boy. Erebus roared in fury and looked down upon the hero faction. He was standing, on the second floor of the mall, looking down at them. Chow Chow. We gotta escape now. We don't have time anymore to hunt down the gremmaries, Siegfried said. All right. Let's get out of here. Like he'll let you leave. Erebus let out a stream of flame from his. This flame was pure black, and it swirled like a tornado. Chow Chow and Siegfried both aimed Graham, the true Longinus, and Dainsleif. Dainsleif created ice to shield them after a ball of light, and the demonic blast from Graham went towards the fire. The fire struck the two blasts and shattered them away. It then struck the eyes, shattering it. The fire then struck Heracles, who began to scream. The fire literally melted away the flesh of Heracles, then the muscles, leaving nothing in its wake. The fire was so hot that nothing was left of Heracles. Such power, Issei said. Chow Chow and Siegfried both couldn't stop him. What is he? The ultimate dragon. Even Great Red fears him. The poison from the fangs is deadly to dragons, the true Longinus, and both of the demonic swords weakened the flames, but only to save the rest of the group. Such terrifying power, Azazel said. Chow Chow, Siegfried, and Leonardo all escaped from the dimension, which means it was now fully collapsing. Erebus swooped down and picked up Kano with his, being careful not to puncture the body with his fangs. Erebus opened up a portal to the shadow dimension and disappeared from them all, leaving the Gremmeries to finally leave the dimension through a magic circle. When they all arrived back at the clubhouse, Azazel told Kaneko what happened. Both Akino and Kaneko were now lifeless entities, sitting on the couch with lifeless faces. Everyone was sad and depressed at the loss of the Spartans. Dimitri also disappeared with Erebus. That battle, Akino and Kaneko both lost something dear to them, and they would never be the same. Their hearts were shattered. Within the shadow dimension, laying on the ground, was the lifeless body of Kano. Erebus and Dimitri were both nearby, looking down at him. Is there anything you can do? Dimitri asked. Yes, there is. It will come at a great cost to me, but he can be saved. Will you do it? When I was put into his sacred gear, I was the one who tortured him. I was the one who made his life go to hell. I was the one who put him in the coma. I never hurt his parents, but I was the one who made his life go to hell. I had fun with that, and I actually feel badly about it, though he has now such great friends because of it. While in him, when he finally learned about me and the devils, I had a lot of fun. He was a kind person and he protected others. When he gave his life to save his friends, including the two women he loves, I decided that I would be willing to be his friend and help him. So yes, I will help him. Thank you. We should have a grand entrance when we return, don't you think? Indeed. Let us show ourselves when we can. 1 month has passed since the death of Kano and the Spartans. No one knows what happened to Erebus or Dimitri since they took Kano to the shadow dimension. No one knows why, but they began to finally move on with their lives. Kaneko and Akino were having the hardest times, but that was okay. It was normal for these two ladies to have trouble returning to their past selves, but time cures most. So today we are going to give Kano and the Spartans a proper farewell party. We would like you two to attend, Azazel said to Akino and Kaneko, who were walking together for school. They grew closer ever since Kano's death, and both were still depressed. They were no longer lifeless, but the spark that was once in their eyes was gone. They no longer smiled like they used to, no longer the warmth. They both nodded to Azazel, who disappeared shortly. The party is at lunchtime. And with that, Azazel walked away. Akino and Kaneko sighed and entered the school, unknown to them of what is coming. Somewhere deep within a temple in India, Siegfried, Fried Selzen, and several other exorcist warriors with spears, sword, and axes stood near the center of the temple inside. The temple itself was massive, and it looked like a place where you could store something, lock it away. This is what they were doing. Siegfried began to lock away some sort of crystal. This crystal was giving off very powerful and ominous power. There were several sutras on the orb, though they were slowly being burned off. It seemed like they wanted this to be locked away. Hurry up and get that thing locked away. It must be contained. Hurry up, Siegfried ordered. Several of the warriors finally placed the orb onto a locking mechanism, which slowly began to lower itself down into the stone very slowly. Siegfried sighed. You have done well, heroes, and we should all. An ominous presence was felt at the entrance. The entrance was pitch black, and black mists began to slowly pour out like smoke. This ominous presence shivered each one of them to the bone, but all of the warriors began to move towards it. Run! There were a total of 5 warriors. There were also Fried and Siegfried. 2 of the warriors were close to the entrance. A sword and an axe pointed at the door. Out from the black smoke came a hooded figure. This figure wore a black robe which hid his feet. Out from beneath the robe came black smoke in wisps, giving him a ghostly-like stature. His hood completely hid his face, and all you can see was nothingness. He wore a small suit of armor which covered his and stomach. He also wore pauldrons with a spike at the corner. Both hands were covered with a gauntlet. The gauntlet had spikes on the knuckles and sharp claw-like points for each digit on the hand. The armor was silver. When the man came out, he brought out 2 shotels, which were like giant sickles. These sickles were giving off an ominous aura. The sickles were folded across the man's. "You," Siegfried said. The hooded figure tilted his head to the side, as if questioning the man. A few seconds later, the figure unfolded his arms and chopped off the heads of the 2 warriors nearby with clean strikes. The man now grew 2 black wispy wings and flew into the air. Black smoke began to fill the air, making its way towards Siegfried and Fried. The smoke enveloped Fried and another 2 warriors, completely making them disappear. This smoke was wispy so you could see through it if they were close. Siegfried drew out Graham and slammed it into the ground, forming a barrier. He also drew out his sword of light, forming another barrier behind Graham's barrier. "Go! Go!" warned Chow Chow. "Hurry!" The warrior next to Siegfried began to run away, going for the other exit. The hooded figure didn't try to stop him. The black smoke began to battle the barriers which began to break. Siegfried looked out into the smoke and saw Fried, who knelt before the barriers. Fried looked at Siegfried with shock, then began to wrinkle. His skin turned black and then into bone as he screamed in pain. The life was just completely drained out of the man's body. The black smoke was a curse, destroying one's life force. The black smoke ended, revealing the hooded figure who began to glide towards Siegfried. Siegfried drew Graham from the ground and pointed the tip towards the hooded figure. The hooded figure walked right into the sword, but the sword did nothing. It just passed right into the body like it was going through smoke. The hooded figure gripped Graham with his left shotel and threw Graham away to the left. Siegfried, completely scared, was gripped by a shotel which was embedded in his clothes. Siegfried was finally lifted into the air as a black smoke began to drift from the hooded figures. The smoke began to enter Siegfried's body as he was breathing it in. The man then threw Siegfried to the ground near the lock. The man walked up to the lock as if he was going to retrieve the stone. "You cannot control that power. Even if you do, Chow Chow will stop you." The hooded man turned and spoke one ominous sentence. "Death cannot be stopped." The man then turned back towards the lock and cut down the holding mechanisms and gripped the orb. The orb finally burned off the remaining sutra, revealing its complete aura. This aura was full of demonic power, enough to destroy any weakling who would try to take it. The man took the orb and began to swallow it whole. "You fool, that orb will." The hooded man's aura disappeared, then reappeared after a few seconds, coming back even deadlier. The man's aura before was cold, full of hate and killing intent. This aura was 20 times stronger, showing off the fusion of the orb into the man's body. You were able to take the orb as your own, you rival that of gods now. The hooded man glided past Siegfried, who began to shrivel up into nothingness. The curse finally taking its toll. The hooded man disappeared into the darkness of the entrance, after taking the demonic sword Siegfried once owned. Back at the school, it was lunchtime. There was a banner saying, "Farewell party to Kano and the Spartans. We will miss you greatly." Kiba took the mic and began to speak. Kano was a very good person. He was nice to people and generous, and made a lot of people smile. I didn't get to know him as well as others did, but he was a very great friend to have. Today, we will say farewell officially. We shall start with something that Kano loved, rap, and to honor him. It will be a rap battle between 2 Russian powers from history. Beats began to play in the room. Rasputin, Azazel dressed as Grigory Rasputin, versus Stalin. There was Sirzek dressed as Joseph Stalin. Begin. Rasputin. Cool mustache, Wario. Try messing with the mad monk, you'll be sorry, yo. How many dictators does it take to turn an empire into a union of ruinous states? It's a disgrace what you did to your own people. Yo, daddy beat you like a dog and now you're evil. You're from Georgia, sweet Georgia. And history books unfold ya as a messed up mother bent in the mind, who built a superpower, but he paid the price with the endless destruction of Russian lives. If you're the man of steel, I spit kryptonite. Big mystic, known to hypnotize. I can end you with a whisper to your wife. Stalin. Look into my eyes, you perverted witch. See the soul of the man who made Mother Russia his bitch. You think I give about my wife? My own son got locked up in prison, and I didn't save his life. You got off easy when they pickled that moose. I'll leave your neck in a noose in a trench and shot. Your whole family shot. All your wizard friends shot. Anyone who sold you pierogi shot. Starve you for days till you waste away. I even crushed motherers when I'm laid in state. Pride of Lenin took Trotsky out of the picture. Dropped a hammer on you harder than I bitch slapped Hitler. When Azazel, Rasputin, began to open his to begin the second verse, a man dropped down from the rafters. This man was dressed as Vladimir Lenin. The Gremrys, Serzex and Azazel were shocked to see it was Dmitri. I have no pride for you. Who ruined everything my revolution was doing. To stop the bourgeoisie. I fought the bondage of classes. The proletariat masses. Have brought me here to spit a thesis against both of yo asses. Let me start with you there, Frankenstein. Looking like something out of R.L. Stein. It's hip-hop chowder, red over white. 'Cause the Tsar's wife can't do shit tonight. And Joseph, you were supposed to be my right-hand man. But your loyalty shriveled up like your right-hand man. Our whole future was bright. You let your heart grow dark. And stopped the greatest revolution since the birth of Marx. Coming from the stage door, a bald man with a very distinct birthmark began to come into the stage. The man had black pupils for his eyes, which gave Azazel the hint to whom this person was. This man was playing Mikhail Gorbachev. Knock, 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 knock. Did somebody say birthmarks? Yo, I'm the host with the most glasnost. Assholes made a mess and the war got cold. Shook hands with both Ronalds, Reagan and McDonald's, no doubt. If your name end with in, time to get out. I have the balls to let Baryshnikov dance, player. Tore down that wall like the Kool-Aid man, oh yeah. You two need yoga. You need to shower. And you all need to learn how to handle real power. While the male said the last sentence, he looked towards Kano and Kaneko who were looking at them with shock. He winked towards them, making them pay more attention. Did somebody say real power? Kano's face appeared on the screen where the background was being played for the rap battle. He wore nothing but pants, socks, boots and a Russian hat. He was dressed as Vladimir Putin. Kano and Kaneko were in complete shock, frozen. Kano then stepped through the screen, tearing it apart. Hey, you want to mess with me? I spit hot borscht when I'm crushing these beats. Blow it up like a tuba while I'm balling in Cuba. Doing judo moves and schooling every communist. I'm a president in my prime, my enemies don't distract me. The last man who attacked me lived a half-life, so comrade, come at me. You don't know what you're doing when you try to bust a rhyme against a mind like Putin. You'll find that the ex-KGB is the best MC in the ex-CCCP. The music kept on playing while Kano smiled happily at the looks of everyone's faces in the lunchroom. Kaneko got up from her seat and climbed onto the stage, shaking. Kano? Yes, Kaneko. I have returned. Kano climbed onto the stage as well, and both women had tears in their eyes. Is this really you? Kano asked weakly. Kano smiled. Yes, it is. This isn't a dream. I have returned from the shadow dimension. Kaneko was the first to get out of her state of shock. She gripped Kano's shirt and yanked him down to her level, planting her onto his. Her was that of passion. There was no roughness, only a revealing her feelings. Kano's eyes went wide, his body frozen. Kaneko pulled back about 10 seconds later, letting Kano breathe. He began to stutter. His stuttering came to an end with Kano gripped his shirt and ate him with rough passion. This revealed her feelings, but also revealed her lust for him. She was more daring than Kaneko. Kano began to shake with confusion and shock, falling on his but when Kano let go. Kano could not perform a coherent thought. Dmitri and the bald-headed man laughed with Azazel at this, enjoying the confusion on Kano. For a leader, he certainly is not good with women. This was entertainment. Kano and Kaneko both helped Kano up, only to hug him ly around his and waist. I don't understand. Both girls smiled at him, looking up at him. They then hugged him again, completely confusing the poor boy. Kano and Kaneko then picked up Kano by his and legs and began to carry him off out of the school. Kano began to squirm, wanting to understand. Dimitri, the bald man, and Azazel both waved him goodbye. That man is dead. Yep. It was great knowing him. Reviving him may have been in vain then. Azazel, Dimitri, and the bald-headed man all said. The Gremry group climbed on the stage and surrounded Dimitri and the bald man. The barrage of questions was about to begin. Inside the Gremry clubhouse. About 5 minutes passed since Kano was dragged off. Kano was taken back to the clubhouse and Dimitri, the bald man, Surzex, Azazel, and the Gremrys followed soon after. Kano was on the couch, smushed by Kaneko and Akino, who were cuddling with him. Akino was behind Kano, and Kaneko was in front. Kaneko had Kano put his arm around her waist, and Kano still wore the confused look on his face. He had no idea what was going on, but he was slowly becoming to understand. So how did you return? Surzex asked of Kano. The bald man stepped forward. I revived him. He was dead, but his soul was intact. I gave him life, though it came at a cost. Who are you? Azazel asked. You should already know. Erebus, Azazel stated. So it is you. Indeed, bird brain. So what is this cost? Akino asked from behind Kano, who was frozen in shock. Well, I'm not sure if it's really a cost, but he isn't a dragon anymore. I was able to salvage his devil side, but he is now a humanoid devil, however. Due to this, I no longer am as powerful as Great Red. I lost the everlasting darkness of my power, though I'm still powerful enough to fry all of you without breaking a sweat. What happened to the everlasting darkness? Surzex asked. Kano controls the power of darkness now. He has given birth to a power that not even I had. Kano now has power equal to God himself and more if he activates a certain ability. Are you serious? Akino asked. Indeed. I felt his power myself. His aura when he doesn't suppress it is more powerful than Surzek's own aura when he is pissed off. Kaneko looked back at Kano, who was still frozen stiff. She then went back to looking at Kano. I have determined things from him. He does have a balance breaker, and he does have something similar to the Juggernaut Drive. The said ability surpassed that of God, but at a cost of his own life, though, since he does have immense demonic powers, he can survive it for a short time. He has about 30 seconds of this ability, while if he used Juggernaut Drive, he could be in said state for well over an hour. That is how much power his ability contains. I see. Well, we are all glad you are back, Kano, and it seems you have gained even more affectionate friends, Azazel said with a smirk. Kano nodded. I'm not sure what is going on here. Azazel rolled his eyes and turned to Erebus. So are you joining up with the devils? I refuse to be a part of the devils as a whole, but I will follow Kano, so I will be a reincarnated dragon. All right then. Well, I have stuff to do. Was nice to see you again, Kano. Don't leave us again. Will do, Governor. Kano blushed a bit and bit his lip. So will one of you two women explain to me clearly what is with you two? Akino and Kaneko both looked at each other. They were trying to get the other to talk to him and tell him, but none would budge. Kaneko finally sighed and lost, unable to compete with Akino's stubbornness. We love you. Kano froze like a board. Why you do? Yes, we do, Kano. We have loved you for months. We never had nightmares back at the training resort. We just wanted to get you to notice us. Notice you, it was hard not to, but I was. We heard that you were afraid of rejection from us. We know about your past, so we don't hold it against you. We love you, Kano, and we want to be with you. Be both of you? Yes. We decided we should share when we lost you. We were devastated. We knew we needed you. Please don't leave us again, Kano, Kaneko said. I won't ever leave. I will stay here with. Kano swallowed some spit. Both of you, Kano said, blushing heavily. Kaneko turned around and planted her upon Kano, ing him slowly with love. She pulled away and licked at Kano's with an iron. Akino now turned Kano and shoved her onto him. She showed equal love, but her was rough and lustful. Kano had both of these women back, his cheeks red from embarrassment. All the Gremrys, including Surzekas, were looking at him. Even Dimitri and Erebus. Surzek sighed and smirked, happy that the boy he revived was protected by two women. Lucky son of a bitch. Both women were snuggling up to him, laying their heads on his. Kano held both by their waists, and was looking up at the ceiling. Kano. I received information that in India, there was a break-in at the temple. Someone was trying to lock something away, a demonic relic that was from the old Mao faction. We heard that a cloaked figure was seen entering and leaving when we arrived. There were several bodies on the ground. 2 headless and the rest just bones. Did you have something to do with this? If I did, I would thank you. Well, I did. The relic is fused with my body. That is why I have the power of the gods. The enemies were that bastard Fried Selzen and Siegfried. They were both killed by my curse. I see. Well, thank you. At least I know that the power of the old Mao is in the right hands or body. Oh, that reminds me. Kiba. Yes? As a gift, Kano sat up, gently moving Akino and Kaneko, and opened up a portal to the shadow dimension. A very ominous aura began to pour from the dimension, shattering the table that the shadow dimension was above. Everyone took a step back as Kano pulled something out of the dimension. A sword. The sword stopped emitting its deadly aura, and it looked like Graham. This is for you. I forged all the 5 demonic swords and the sword of light into one powerful sword. It has all the abilities of each sword, along with devil-killing powers of the light. The light was actually increased so it can eradicate high-level devils with ease. I also fused it with my shadow powers, so even you can wield it. I have given the sword its new owner, you. Kiba gripped the sword and his eyes went wide at the power flowing through him. Thank you. I shall use this as a Knight of Rias. Kano nodded and just kept sitting up. Kaneko crawled into Kano's lap like a cat, her cat ears and tail in view. Akino herself just snuggled up next to Kano, hugging onto him. Both girls were extremely clingy, and he loved it. Oh, Kano. There is a party in the underworld tonight. Would you like to come? Rias asked. Can I bring a date or 2? They have to come as well as my group. I know. Ha. I will definitely be there. Would be fun to get some fancy foods. Kaneko was swishing her tail happily, curled up in Kano's lap. Akino was happy as well at the news. Unknown to them, danger awaits. Within the underworld. It was the time of the party. Kano was heading to the party, going inside the Gremry castle. Surzex gave him the Gremry family treatment so he was able to enter at any time. He opened the door to the party room and stepped inside. The Gremry group was already inside, dancing, eating food or talking amongst each other. When Kano arrived, Kaneko and Akino both walked over. Kaneko was in her cat form as always while Akino was in a kimono. They both gave him on his cheeks and then took his hands and led him towards their table. Kano sat down with Kaneko on his lap and Akino on a chair next to him. Kano, said Surzex, who came over. Yes? Would you like to partake in a dance with me and a couple other people? What kind of dance? It won't be a slow dance so you don't need a partner, but I just want to talk with you. Ah, that would be alright. Kaneko climbed off and sat on his chair, waiting happily for him. Kano walked with Surzex towards the dance floor and a dance music came on. Jungle Boogie. Surzex and Kano began to talk about Kano's powers, which Kano happily replied to. Grafia was with them, talking with him as well about his powers. They showed no concern whether or not he would use his powers against them as they knew Kano would never harm his 2 women. Kaneko's ears twitched and she got up from the table. She spotted a black cat and began to go to it in a hurry. Akino was off chatting with Rias about raiding games and the upcoming match with Serorg. Kaneko followed the black cat outside and went into the forest, sitting on a rock. She was waiting patiently now, her head switching back and forth. It's nice to see you again, Nyan said, a mysterious voice. A beautiful woman with assets who was wearing a black kimono stepped out from the darkness. She had cat ears and a tail like Kaneko. Kuroka, what are you doing here? I came to take you back, of course. Rias ran over towards Kano, who was busy talking with Surzex, and tapped on his shoulder. Yes, Rias? Kano asked. It's Kaneko. She left in a hurry and I don't know why. I'm getting worried. They'll look into it immediately. Surzex, Grafia, I would have to cut this discussion short. I have to make sure Kaneko is okay. Of course. Understood. Kano and Rias ran out of the door and into the forest, following Rias's bad familiar. They hid behind a tree as they began to listen in on their conversation. Why are you here? It's simple, Nyan. I want to take you back and make you mine, though at first I just wanted to visit the party. Nyan. I don't want to go with you. I'm happy where I'm at. Come on, Chiron, I'm your big sister. Nyan. I don't want to go with you. You are evil. I will take you by force, you know, Nyan. A man with a staff, Biko, stepped out. Come on, Kuroka. We really shouldn't be here. Just a minute, Biko. I want to take my little sister here. Kano stepped out from behind the tree and approached the three. Well, that is a problem then. It would be troublesome to have Kaneko gone. Kano. Why are you here? Simple. I wanted to make sure you were alright, Kano said with a smile. Kaneko ran behind Kano, hugging onto his shirt. She had tears in her eyes, not wanting to leave. Who are you? He is Kano, my boyfriend. Your boyfriend Chiron? Well, you sure snagged a delicious-looking one. Those scars of his are quite attractive. Nyan. Maybe you'll take him with us. Nyan. I really don't think that is going to happen. I really think you should leave. I won't leave without my Chiron. I don't care even if I have to kill you all. Nyan. Kuroka began to emit a dangerous mist from her body. This mist was green and began to flow past Kano. Kaneko knelt while coughing and looking weak. Kano just stood there, unaffected. Rias fell down to the ground as well, all weak. You are unaffected? You have such a weak aura. Nyan. Kano looked back at Kaneko and a vein began to throb in his forehead. Kuroka, your mist won't work on Kano, he is someone beyond your abilities. Is that so? Nyan. Well, show me what you got. Nyan. While Kano was in his human form, his aura is suppressed to nothingness, so no one could tell he harbored such powers. However, around Kano's body a wind began to glow. 8 strands of shadow began to swirl around Kano like the wind was moving them. Then they laid down flat. The tips began to emit their own line, forming a circle out of the strands, while the inside of the circle began to become black. A dark black circle was formed, and it was radiating power. Kano's power was slowly rising to that of a god. The circle then began to rise from the ground, wrapping around Kano like a cocoon. Once the cocoon finished, Kano's power exploded. It immediately began an oppressive aura, full of hostility and killing intent. When the cocoon finally shattered into black sparks, what was replaced was a hooded figure. The same hooded figure from the temple. He had both of his sickles at his sides. What power? Biko said. For someone so young to have the power of the gods. Kuroka. What did you snag? This guy is a monster. He isn't a monster, he's my boyfriend, Kaneko said with pride. The hooded figure disappeared in black smoke, then reappeared behind Kuroka. His sickle was around her throat, and any movement from either one would slice her neck. I could kill you right now, foolish cat, but you are Kaneko's sister. I don't think she would want you dead. However you ever harm Kaneko again or try to take her from me, I will not be so merciful, said Kano, in a very deep and dark voice. Kano poofed into black smoke, and appeared right next to Kaneko in his human form, picking her up like a bride. Kuroka looked at Kano with fear and her mist disappeared. Kano left the forest with Rias, leaving Kuroka and Biko behind. Kano, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. I did what was necessary. You are someone I love and no one will harm you or they will perish. She is your sister, so I didn't kill her. Thank you? Kaneko said ing Kano gently. Kano at her back. They entered the party afterwards and from then on, Kaneko sat on Kano's lap, hugging onto him the whole night. Kaneko loved Kano, who was very sweet to her and made her a better person. A week after the party, a war was occurring in the underworld. Shadow monsters of massive size was rampaging through the underworld. Several more devils from the old Mao faction are also rampaging. They are assisting the monsters, and several other fallen angels in combat. These are all renegade fallen angels, mind you. The Gremry group were busy in combat against these creatures, while Kano was preparing for the final battle. His revenge. Akino and Kaneko were both with him, while Rias was with Issei and Ophis, who were both fighting back. Ophis had a lot of her strength drained and was only as strong as both of the heavenly dragons, but it wasn't enough to stop the monsters, though they stalled them quite a bit. They were no longer advancing upon the capital, but was in fact stopped in one space, fighting back against the two dragons. Kano looked at his two women with a smile. I have to go and kill him. We know you do and we won't stop you, just promise us you will return. I can't make that promise. I can't make promises that I don't know if I can keep, and I honestly don't know if I can come back alive. Cao Cao will die tonight regardless, but I may have to sacrifice my own life to save him. We understand, but we would still like you to come back alive. We can't stand to see you die. Please beat him and come back. I will really try to. Now it's time for me to go. Both girls nodded and Kano activated his balance breaker. Turning into the hooded figure, he flew out of the house he was in and made his way towards the enemy base. Cao Cao and Leonardo were both there, waiting. While he was flying, he passed by Erebus and Dimitri, who were fighting the old Mao faction and the fallen angels. Erebus and Dimitri were definitely winning. Landing now in front of Cao Cao and Leonardo, who couldn't do anything but concentrate, Cao Cao smirked at him. So you have returned much stronger than since I killed you. No response. Well, I guess it will come down to who was the stronger. Longinus. Cao Cao activated his balance breaker, which was the 7 orbs, but Kano was unafraid. The darkness swallows the light. Not this kind of light. Kano and Cao Cao both flew, but Kano activated his Juggernaut Drive, like ability, Soul Wings. Upon this ability, 2 black wispy wings came out of Kano's back, and his powers reached over a god's powers. Cao Cao looked shocked, but he smirked. So I get to take down a super god? My lucky day, Cao Cao said as he charged at Kano. Kano stood there and grabbed the spear with his 2 hands. Once he had Cao Cao sitting still, Kano's wings wrapped around Cao Cao and himself, enveloping both now in a mist of darkness. Cao Cao was struggling against Kano's hold, but Kano kept a grip. About 10 seconds later, Kano tossed Cao Cao out of the mist as the mist and Kano's wings disappeared. What happened in the mist? Well, Cao Cao lost 6 of the 7 orbs. What did you do? The darkness swallowed your light. I left you the ability to fly. This now comes down to swordsmanship. You bastard! This is a spear that kills gods, Cao Cao said in a rage, flinging himself at Kano. Kano smiled and used his sickles to block the stab. The sickles held the spear in place, only for Kano to flip Cao Cao over and over, dislodging himself from the spear. With now the spear in Kano's position, Kano hid the spear in the shadow dimension. Now, without the power that the spear gave Cao Cao, he was an ordinary slow human. Kano disappeared and appeared right behind Cao Cao. Die! Kano swung his sickle and removed Cao Cao's head, only to turn to Leonardo. Destroy your creatures or die. Leonardo couldn't hear him. Kano approached and noticed something. A black vein in his forehead. Kano chuckled. The sacred gear has destroyed Leonardo's mind already. It was controlling him. With a sigh, Kano removed Leonardo's head. He then took to the skies and flew off back towards the Gremry base. Landing near Rias, he removed his balance breaker. Both Leonardo and Cao Cao are dead. Are you sure about Leonardo? Those monsters are still here and they seem to be getting stronger, Rias said, pointing. They saw Ophis getting blasted down by the SD of the shadow monsters, and Kano nodded. Alright, I will handle this. Kano flew up into the air after activating his balance breaker, heading into the skies. Kano raised his hands into the sky and an orb of shadow was appearing. Ophis and Issei took to the skies and flew behind Kano. All the other fighters flew away as well, getting behind Kano. Kano released the orb in a beam, blasting away each of the Mao faction, fallen angels and the shadow creatures in a beam. The beam was being moved by Kano so it would just wash over each of the enemies. The enemies died from the energy, disintegrating from the house-sized beam. The day was won and Kano flew back down towards his group. He landed in between Akino and Kaneko, who both hugged him and began to his after he reverted back. They were both sharing his, and ing each other as well. Kano hugged his 2 ladies and Ed back, ready to live a long devil life with them. It was a great life. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the xDoug-Dimmadome-x for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.